May his soul be at rest, and may he encounter more compassion, may he encounter more mercy in the afterlife than he had time to give others in this one. And also, thoughts and prayers to all the male escorts who were trying to pay off some student loan debt with him. I know dozens of you are going to miss this revenue stream.
So great to be with you this morning. Hello, everyone. We've got a great one today, and there's a lot we need to cover. Senator Mitch McConnell has finally given the world proof of life, posting a photo of himself recovering in the hospital. He has disappeared for so long that Congress almost had to list him as an historical landmark. But even the photo looked like it needed a filibuster to finish loading. Already, this has spawned all kinds of new conspiracy theories that the photo is a fake, and they're almost all coming from the right wing. Following the record-breaking heat wave, Europe now finds themselves awash in wildfires all over from Greece to Spain. It's terrible. Even on the outskirts of Paris, they have recorded in Europe, friends, over 10,000 excess heat-related deaths. And yet climate denial is still somehow treated like an opinion instead of, customer feedback from reality. And actor Sam Neill has died. His family has announced he was born in New Zealand. You know him from Jurassic Park, but so many other great films, including Dead Calm. He was 78 years old. And one person has been killed today in an ice-involved shooting in Maine. We don't know much, but it took place in Biddleford, about 15 miles south of Portland. And we don't know who was killed. We only know ICE was involved, and state police and the Department of Public Safety are on the scene. We'll tell you more as we learn it. We are now at a place where on Friday night, Donald Trump refused to sign a bipartisan housing bill, not because he opposed the bill, but because the Senate won't pass a completely different SAVE Act bill. So he's like the toddler who won't eat broccoli because Pluto isn't a planet anymore. And Trump today also promised a lot of things about the Strait of Hormuz that will never, ever happen. So we won't need to go there. Today on the show, we have a great guest list. We're going to be joined by Sam Brodey of the Boston Globe to talk about the Graham-Plattner implosion and all the good that may come from it. We're going to be joined in hour number 3 by Professor Corey Brettschneider, author of The Oath and the Office and the Presidents and the People, and the star of the top-rated Oath and the Office podcast. And our special guest in hour number 2, because this is our first time in this beautiful time slot, we are pleased to bring you one of the best friends of our show, who's going to be calling in to join us live, former American President Martin Sheen. So our most important guest is you. We're at 866-997-4748, 866-997-GRIT. Again, my name is John Fugelsang. My executive producer is the great Chris Houselt. Thea Harper produces our show out of beautiful Brooklyn, and we are so glad that you are with us. I want to let anyone know who's concerned. Thom Hartmann is very well. His show is still airing on terrestrial radio right now, still in the same time slot. You can still hear Thom's show every day on Progress on Demand or on the SiriusXM app, as well as on Free Speech TV and the rebroadcast on the evenings here. Thom Hartmann is the most brilliant man in all of radio, and I listen to his podcast every day. He is a hero to me, and he wrote me a lovely, lovely note wishing us luck in the launch in this time slot, and I love him. So, 866-997-4748. We would love to hear from you. 866-997-GRIT. And I got to be honest, friends, when we knew we'd be starting this morning, we didn't know that this would be a day we'd all be talking about Lindsey Graham. But the death of Senator Graham does raise a lot of questions, and it's prompted everything from some very heartfelt tributes to some very, very harsh, cruel criticism. And it raises a broader question. And I want to ask you about this. How should a democracy remember controversial or dishonest public figures? Is it possible to be honest about someone's true political legacy without turning their death into either a saint-making exercise or a cruel celebration? Well, let's see if we can do it, because our media always says that Lindsey Graham flip-flopped. And Democrats, liberals, progressives, moderates, the whole anti-evil portion of America always say he flip-flopped. I don't think that's fair. So many people have wondered, how could Lindsey Graham have flip-flopped? How do you go from impeaching Bill Clinton for his private life to defending Donald Trump? How do you go from telling the truth about Donald Trump to then blindly defending Donald Trump's grotesque crimes? How are you a Republican who was helping obstruct the Merrick Garland Supreme Court vote, promising your party would never rush through a nominee, and then doing exactly that when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died? I understand why people view the late Lindsey Graham as an inconsistent flip-flopper, but I'm here to argue otherwise. I have to be fair. This man was never inconsistent in any way. The truth is that Lindsey Graham never changed. He never flip-flopped. He didn't evolve. I mean, that would suggest they were two different Lindsays.
Lindsay's.
I'm afraid there weren't. There has only ever been one Lindsey Graham, a man whose deepest conviction was being adjacent to wherever the political power happened to be standing. Lindsey Graham was consistently, bravely devoted to whatever belief system would help him and him alone politically at any given moment. When being a barnacle on John McCain's dinghy suited him, he did that. When groveling to Trump and playing a lot of golf suited him, that was his new reality. There was no flip-flopping in Lindsey Graham's craven actions. When it came to being spineless, this man stood tall with no spine. So it is with reverence and respect that I tell you that this man, may he rest in peace, had the moral courage that had the same shelf life of gas station sushi. But here's the big question now. Is there an ethical obligation, friends, to tell the truth after someone dies? I've seen so many people attacking this man brutally, and I've seen so many people on the left saying, don't speak ill of the dead. And I get all sides of it. But does don't speak ill of the dead apply to elected officials whose decisions affected millions of lives? Is there a distinction morally between attacking a person's character and accurately describing their public record? When history looks back on our public officials, should death soften criticism? Or should death just be the end of any new criticism? I mean, can silence be a form of historical revisionism? Back in 1999, Congressman Lindsey Graham was one of the impeachment managers for Bill Clinton, and he argued we had to impeach Bill Clinton. It was about abuse of public trust, not just violations of criminal law. Representative Lindsey Graham said, a nation that cannot confront perjury and obstruction of justice by its chief executive is in trouble. Do you remember the other House managers from that impeachment, by the way? Remember Henry Hyde, James Sensenbrenner, Steve Chabot, Ed Bryant? Any of those guys? No, you don't remember any of them. Because after the Clinton impeachment, they retired or lost re-election or went to private law practice or left politics. Lindsey Graham was the only one of those trolls to impeach Bill Clinton to get a promotion and become a U.S. Senator. He won election in 2002, succeeding the dead racist Strom Thurmond. And back then, I remember Lindsey thundered, you don't even have to be convicted of a crime to lose your job in this constitutional republic. That was his argument for firing Bill Clinton. You don't have to be convicted of a crime. And then Donald Trump came along. And Lindsey Graham discovered an exciting new constitutional principle, friends. Actually, you can have cops beaten for a lie to overturn an election. Turns out that's fine. I mean, during Clinton's impeachment, he said impeachment's about restoring honor and integrity to the office. And by Trump's second term, this guy had redefined integrity as whatever gets me another invitation to Mar-a-Lago. So again, people say he's inconsistent. No, my liberal friends. Lindsey Graham was remarkably consistent. His ideology has always been me first. When John McCain was the center of Republican gravity, remember back then? We disagreed with John McCain, but he wasn't a loathsome, detestable individual, corrupt and attacker of women. No. But Lindsey orbited McCain. Remember when John McCain and Lindsey Graham were a thing? Oh my God, they were inseparable. Every time I saw those guys, they were like my favorite same-sex couple. Two men, always together, opposed to gay marriage, who always looked like they were announcing one. But when Donald Trump became the sun, Lindsey left McCain's orbit and discovered solar power. Do you remember 2015? Donald Trump mocked John McCain's years as a prisoner of war, so Lindsey called Trump a jackass and a race-baiting, xenophobic religious bigot and a kook and crazy, and then warned us, if we nominate Trump, we'll get destroyed, and we'll deserve it. And then Lindsey Graham invested in pom-poms and a cheerleader skirt to dance beside Senator McCain's grave with the man who despised and slurred him. Lindsey has traveled politically much farther than Lewis and Clark, and he never had to leave Washington. So don't forget, I mean, after January 6th, Georgia's Republican Secretary of State said Lindsey Graham, who was not the senator from Georgia, called him about tossing legal ballots. And then came the terrorist attack of January 6th, because according to the dictionary, that's what it was. It wasn't a riot. It was a terrorist attack. And that's when Lindsey stood on the Senate floor and declared, count me out, enough's enough. And everybody thought, finally. But Trump thought, yeah, see you at brunch, Lindsey. And a couple of weeks later, Lindsey was back in Mar-a-Lago. essentially looking like a guy apologizing to his abusive hubby on cops, you know? Hey, he didn't mean to lie about alternate electors and try to steal the election and have cops beaten for a lie, officer. Don't take him away. It was my fault. I made him do it. Take me instead. I'm clumsy. Right. Again, there's no flip-flopping involved. Whatever Lindsey Graham thought was best for Lindsey Graham. The Merrick Garland episode is the greatest performance of his career. Do you remember in 2016, he practically engraved his pledge in stone? Use my words against me. He swore Republicans would never fill a Supreme Court vacancy during an election year. That's crazy. That's the only reason we're doing this, he said. Use my words against me. And America said, okay, we'll do that. And 4 years later, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, weeks before an election. And Lindsey looked at his own quote, like it was written by a distant cousin. And Amy Coney Barrett got confirmed so fast Amazon Prime called it rude. Lindsey didn't reverse himself. He demonstrated his principles are like complimentary hotel shampoos. Just take it, leave it, forget it. Which is why I think that calling Senator Graham a hypocrite almost misses the point. Hypocrisy requires believing in your own standards. Lindsey's standards have always been totally transparent, friends. His position on any issue could be determined by answering one question.
Yeah, who's holding the keys to the Republican Party today? I mean, again, I respect for his family, respect for all those who are mourning him today. I don't know who's mourning him because, honestly, I think Republicans hated this man more than Democrats. I mean, I want to call him a political weather vane, but it's not fair to weather vanes because weather vanes know how to resist the wind for a split second. Lindsey Graham didn't chase power. He anticipated it. Trump, who used Lindsey transactionally, decided to exploit his death all day. And he decided to exploit Lindsey Graham's death not by talking about Lindsey Graham's achievements through his career, because Lindsey didn't have a ton of those. No, Trump did it by calling TV shows, making the death all about himself, and most tellingly, exploiting the loss into arguing that this is why we need to pass his unconstitutional, insane, devoid of votes for women SAVE Act, right? That's the only reason he did it. He's exploiting the death to try to take the vote away from married women who change their names. The SAVE Act would require proof of citizenship just to register, which you don't need. Voter ID requirements, which you don't need. There has never been an election in this country where the outcome was changed by voter impersonation. It doesn't exist. And they want states to share voter data with Homeland Security. By the way, I'm all for this. Let's have a big national media war with Republicans right before the election over the Save America Act. I think we should get a spotlight on what this law says. I think every American voter deserves to know the details of the Save America Act, especially the female voters. One of the things I can say about Senator Graham is that he counseled Trump to remain supportive of our ally Ukraine, because we signed a treaty in 1994 pledging that if Ukraine gave up their nukes, America, Russia, and the UK would always defend them. So, again, this isn't warmongering defending Ukraine. This is honoring our ally, honoring our promise in a treaty. Donald Trump doesn't like that, as you know. Trump wants to abandon this nation. I don't know why. But Lindsey Graham was one of Ukraine's staunchest supporters in Washington. So what this means now is that people are all wondering, oh, does this mean Putin killed him? That's the new conspiracy theory you're going to be hearing. Give a quick listen. Here's clip A3. Here's Trump telling Kristen Welker how Lindsey Graham, staunch party line Republican, was the most bipartisan person in Congress.
Real problem. I wouldn't often ask, but if I had a problem with a Democrat, he could work it out. He was a great politician, actually.
Yeah, of course. So there's so much we could say that's negative and derogatory and hateful, and that's not necessary, unless you can do it in a very clever way. In that case, go ahead. But, you have to remember, this term, Graham said that Trump was the greatest president of all time, that they should change the Nobel Prize to the Trump Prize. He said on June 9th, Mr. President, you're not far behind God. This is a man that he once warned about. So what can I say except contrast Lindsey or the other Quislings who once told the truth about Trump and now grovel, the Rubios, the Hegseths, the Vances, with how the Democratic Party just removed Graham Plattner, who had an excellent chance of winning. Because some things are more important than earthly power. A special Republican primary is going to be held by August 15th to pick a new Senate nominee. South Carolina Governor McMaster will appoint a temporary replacement to finish out the term, and we'll be hearing a lot more about Senator Graham's passing in the next few days, a lot of conspiracy theories as well. We'll hear the best and worst of all people, and all kinds of political opportunism. So let's try to be tasteful about this, okay? I may his soul be at rest, and may he encounter more compassion, may he encounter more mercy in the afterlife than he had time to give others in this one. And also, thoughts and prayers to all the male escorts who are trying to pay off some student loan debt with him. I know dozens of you are going to miss this revenue stream.
Sexy Liberal, this year, one show only in Southern California.
Hollywood, the city of magic.
Saturday, October 24th in L.A. One night, one chance. Let's get it right. The Sexy Liberal show returns to the Saban Theater. One night only, October 24th. Starring Stephanie Miller.
Give it up for yourselves, L.A. Sexy Liberals. God bless you.
John Fugelsang.
Cable news, it should be called the stuff they air between Viagra and Cialis ads.
Comedy duo Frangela.
You're the kind of good white folks who adopt black babies. Yes. And not because they're cheaper.
And outrageous Hal Sparks.
Believe me, I have a lot of liberal friends who love this country enough to vote almost every other election.
Special VIP meet and grope tickets for palling around with the stars after the show at the Saban in Beverly Hills.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Only one Sexy Liberal show in 2026. Saturday, October 24th at the Saban Theater in Beverly Hills. Tickets on sale now at sexyliberal.com.
Immigration is one of the most controversial and morally complex subjects in both America and modern Christianity, one that demands both nuance and thoughtful, studious discourse. Historically, the Christian right hasn't been interested in that, but they're divine at reducing things to catchy xenophobic catchphrases. Build the wall. Send them home. Go back where you came from. Deport them all. Keep America American. Stop the invasion. Jobs for Americans, not illegals. No amnesty. The God of the Bible consistently takes an unambiguously compassionate stance towards immigrants and strangers. Jesus commands individuals and nations to welcome the stranger and warns they'll be judged by how well they do it. It's a great day to be an American with empathy who can spell the word your properly. And right now I am so pleased to welcome our first guest of the day. Sam Brodey is a national political reporter at the Boston Globe. He's been there since 2024, and he's covered presidential contests and impeachments. He worked at the Daily Beast, and he did the investigation into Kirsten Sinema's use of campaign and taxpayer funds, which I was a big fan of. And for the Boston Globe lately, he's been doing great reporting on the U.S. Senate race in Maine and the rise and collapse of Graham Plattner's campaign, and what this means for the Democratic and D.C. politics at large. It's great to have you with us, Sam Brodey. Welcome to SiriusXM.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I can only imagine how strange your life has been in the last couple of weeks. Before I get to the specific questions, what's it been like for you? What's it been like for your nervous system covering this story every day? I imagine you're hitting refresh every 20 seconds on the Graham Plattner story before he finally departed the race last week. It seems like it's just been it's been extraordinary over here with our listeners going back and forth. How's it been for you covering it?
Yeah, no, it's been absolutely crazy. I mean, it's one of those types of stories that is so high stakes and is so fast moving that it is really a challenge as a reporter to both try and make sense of what is happening, both kind of on a granular level and on the big picture level, moment to moment. I mean, truly last week, it felt like a decade had passed between when the first Politico story dropped about Graham Plattner and then, him finally exiting the race. Formally 5 days later, so much had happened with such far-reaching consequences, for this race. And, at the Globe, we cover Maine a little more kind of closely and on a local level than some other outlets. But this is a story that the entire country is interested in. It's a story that's going to affect the entire country just because of how important the U.S. Senate race is in Maine. So just trying to hold all that together while making sure that we're getting the facts right. In these fast-moving situations, there's often people who think they know what's going on or don't think they know what's going on. We share those details. So it's our job to bring the news to people as quickly as we can, but also make sure that we're getting things right. So.
Oh, I think you've frozen, Mr. Brodey. I think Mr. Brodey is frozen on our Zoom. Are you there? We're at 866-997. There you go. Hello, sir.
Oh,
I
sorry.
think we lost you for a second. No worries. And I was just agreeing with what you said. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we were having a national debate about whether empathy and forgiveness means overlooking a Nazi tattoo that a guy might have gotten. And do we have to close our eyes to that? So in your career, with all the coverage you've done of events like this, Have you ever seen national party leaders or state party officials and major endorsers all abandon a nominee within roughly 24 hours?
This was my first time seeing anything like this, where the fallout was so swift and decisive. I mean, it became clear within a matter of hours that Graham Plattner's path to remaining in the race had essentially vanished. So that is rare, but I do think it really speaks to what had built up. You know, you're kind of alluding to this, but what had really built up over the course of the last 10 months that Graham Plattner had been in the race, this steady drip of stories, really calling into question so many aspects about his background. And you know, I found in my several trips to Maine to interview voters that there was a lot of willingness to forgive, reservoir of goodwill, a focus on Graham Plattner's message, which I do really think resonated with people. And we're seeing the kind of potential replacements all sort of jockeying to take up the mantle of that message. So there was a lot of kind of the dynamics on the ground in Maine were something. But I do think that party leaders never got fully really comfortable with Graham Plattner being their standard bearer in Maine, even though he had effectively won the primary, even though he was preparing to face Susan Collins. They never fully got comfortable. And I do think that, you know, the cliche, the straw breaking the camel's back, is sort of what happened here. I think that there was a class of party leadership that was like, okay, that's enough. They had been, I think, ready for this shoe to drop, not specifically, but anticipating something else might come out about this guy. And if it was really serious, I think they were prepared to say, all right, we've hit our limit. And given Maine law, where there is a process in place potentially for replacing a candidate should they drop out within a certain time frame, that also kind of, I think, added to the urgency of what we saw last week in terms of party leaders and others abandoning him.
Yes. Well, I mean, do you think it was ultimately about the seriousness of this latest allegation itself, or what the party leaders just viewed as a broader pattern of controversies? Every Monday morning we're told, okay, that's it, there's no more. I mean, how much pressure came from Washington as opposed to Maine Democrats?
I think both. And to your question, I do think that there was both aspects at play here. I think there was the nature of this allegation specifically, which was, you know, on the record, had detail, was reported out. I think that had been a line that you know, if it were crossed, people had Democrats, high profile Democrats, you know, there was a meeting Graham Plattner attended in June where he met with Democratic senators, and reportedly these senators asked, is there more coming? And of course he said no, but some senators indicated if there were a sexual assault allegation, that would be a line that they would not be willing to, you know, if he had crossed that line, then they would be withdrawing their support. So I do think the nature of the allegations and how it was reported played a big role. But I do think that there was a sense that, like, people were just tired of having to deal with every successive cycle with this guy. And after everything, he said, nope, that's, you know, there's nothing coming out. And it had really been this way from the very beginning, from when the first sort of reporting started to surface about his past internet comments. It was always like, all right, that's it. And I don't think everyone really fully believed that. And I think that exasperation, brought us to, I think, the point that we saw last week.
You know, Mr. Brodey, what I keep hearing from Plattner supporters who've called here, or that I know in the state and around the country, they all have the same line. They say, I didn't sign up for Graham Plattner. I signed up to beat Trumpism. I signed up for a Democrat who's fighting for FDR-style policies. And I think that's the great tragedy here. The movement deserve better. The volunteers, Maine, deserve better. Did Democratic organizations just fail to vet him thoroughly enough? I mean, it does seem like there were some corners cut.
It does. And look, everything looks different in hindsight, right? There's been so much of a consensus of, well, of course this was going to happen. And I do think that, like, all the red flags and all of the signs were there. And I think there's a lot of folks in the Democratic Party who are saying, like, look, I told you so. There are people who took some heat for not getting behind him, or even saying that they wouldn't support him in the Democratic Party, who now are feeling really validated. I do think it ultimately comes down to the candidate. You know, if you have this kind of stuff in your past, this should really be a kind of, I'm not going to really subject myself or my supporters to that, should these things come out, I mean, it's politics. This is one of the most high-profile Senate races in the country, if not the most. You have to think that these things are going to come out and that people are going to do even some cursory digging into your background. So ultimately, I think the buck stops with Graham Plattner. But look, obviously, there was a crew of consultants who recruited Graham Plattner to run, who did cut corners on vetting. And I think some of this would not have shown up in the vetting, to be clear. I think some of the allegations certainly that came out last week would not have, but stuff about internet comments, a bunch of things would have come up in vetting. And I think for a normal, competent team, there would have been enough in that vetting that comes up that gives them a reason to say, you know what, thanks for your interest, but we're going to go with somebody else for this race.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper to spend the money and vet the person. How much of this do you think is about the age-old tensions between the progressive wing of the party and the, whatever you want to call it, the institutional Democratic establishment? I mean, obviously, the greatest gift Republicans have is that the moderates and the liberals can't stop fighting each other, and this is what we see gets a lot of people elected. But I mean, before the scandal, this guy represented that very kind of DSA establishment, you know, I mean, that kind of outsider DSA insurgency. Do you think this kerfuffle is going to strengthen the establishment Democrats, or is there a chance that they might pick a replacement who picks up the mantle on some of these FDR-style issues?
Yeah, no, these are all I think the key questions. And to your first question, I do think this whole situation really did reflect the tensions between progressives and the party establishment. I think a lot, my findings were in interviewing people in Maine who were pro-Plattner before all this happened. Yes. A lot of their support and their positive feelings towards Graham Plattner came from their deep distaste for the Democratic establishment. You know, it was known that Chuck Schumer and party leaders preferred Governor Janet Mills as their nominee to take on Susan Collins. And the fact that they intervened or signaled their intervention at all was enough to bring a lot of Maine Democrats into the Graham Plattner fold, because they were so fed up with party leadership in Washington. So I think that's a critical part of it. Now, I will say that, you know, around as Graham was sort of beginning his slow process of getting out of the race, there was a lot of talk about, is the person who's going to replace him pick up the mantle of his movement, the populist progressive policies, or is this just going to be the way for the party to kind of install somebody that they think is going to be the most electable? It's going to be an establishment person. This is the question. However, I would say that of the folks who have stepped up and of the likely people to replace him, all of them are sounding a lot more like Graham Plattner than they were a few weeks ago. And the three people most likely to replace Graham Plattner, it should be said, all ran in the governor primary and did not win. But they're all, you know, very credible, real candidates with a lot of support. And a lot of them are sounding like Graham Plattner. And I think they all know that in order for them to consolidate Democratic support and then focus on the general election, they're going to need to adopt aspects of how he framed the issues, how he talked about things. And this is really, I think, he really, really struck a chord with the electorate in Maine right now. I think that is undoubtable. And that's how he got as far as he did, considering the baggage that he had. And so I think the candidates know this, that they're going to have to tap into this. I have a hard time seeing somebody with a much different political approach being the Democratic nominee for Senate in Maine.
I think you're right. I don't think Janet Mills dropped out like she did because people are just finding flannel popular. This is all about ideology. Will the replacement inherit Plattner's fundraising network and the volunteers and the campaign infrastructure, or will they essentially have to start over on some of those regards?
That's the really big question. I think that in terms of volunteers, I mean, Graham Plattner that campaign had a grassroots presence that is just rare to see in politics, and certainly rare to see from somebody who a year ago nobody knew who he was. Speaks to the depth of the support of the movement. I'm not sure, and these candidates who replace him also may bring their own volunteers to bear. We'll see. I do think that the thing to watch is Democrats at the end of the day in Maine, and I know in many other states, are just desperate to defeat Susan Collins. And if there is a sense that Democrats are closer to this goal with a different candidate who has less baggage, a fresh approach, whatever, I do think that the volunteers will be there. The fundraising will be there. Will it be enough to defeat Susan Collins? Unclear. But I do think that I would be surprised if there was a meaningful, serious drop off. But I do think it's important to I'll be at the convention next weekend. It will be very interesting to see how that unfolds. If there is even a sense or a feeling among Graham Plattner supporters that their concerns were not heard in this process, they're not happy with how the replacement was picked, or anything that could alienate them from the process, that's going to be a big risk for the eventual nominee if Graham Plattner supporters are turned off in any way.
It's almost ironic, or maybe it just says a lot about our friends in Maine. But I mean, Susan Collins has also won difficult races in the past by cultivating an image that she's an independent Republican or an independent-ish Republican. And it does really speak to the iconoclastic nature of some of our Maine voters about this. But I got to ask, how much easier do you think her reelection campaign became after Plattner withdrew? I know we have to wait and see who the replacement will be, but I mean, will she become the clear favorite until we see who this is, or is Maine still competitive enough that any Democrat entering late can go? I kind of feel like there's this big buildup of enthusiasm just waiting for someone on the Democratic side to inherit it.
Yeah, I do think that Susan Collins was the favorite before this, and she probably is still a slight favorite. But my sense in talking to folks in Maine is that Republicans wanted to face Graham Plattner. They felt very good about their chances against Graham Plattner, even before the latest story broke. I think they felt very confident that they could beat Graham Plattner. Graham Plattner's campaign was struggling, I think, fundraising wise. Republicans, on the airwaves in Maine, they had reserved tens of millions of dollars and were just prepared to nuke Graham Plattner on TV through Election Day. I think they felt very good. And I think there's some frustration among Republicans that oh, great. We spent all these months kind of coming up with a general election strategy to beat this Graham Plattner guy. Now they're switching him out. They're going to get a candidate almost certainly who has less baggage than Graham Plattner does.
Yeah. John Edwards has less baggage than Graham Plattner does.
Exactly. So I think that this is not how they wanted things to go. However, it sounds great to replace a candidate with a potentially better candidate halfway through, but President Kamala Harris, didn't happen. So, I think that there is a lot of risk on the Democratic side, because ultimately, at the end of the day, as Democrats spend the next 2 weeks kind of litigating this process, who is campaigning? Susan Collins. Who's raising money? Susan Collins. She gets to just keep going. And Democrats, it's going to be 2 weeks before we know who the candidate even is. So that is the risk, is that their campaign has hit pause. And I do think that there's some worry about what that could mean.
Can I ask you about just the last couple of days of the Plattner campaign? Because, boy, howdy, was it interesting around here the past 96 hours. And your reporting goes deep on this. Plattner's exit, but he at first wasn't going to officially exit until the end of workday on Monday rather than last week. You go deep on the tensions between the campaign and the Maine Democratic Party. Why did those disagreements get so public? Was it just a worry that Plattner's team wanted total influence over selecting the successor?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I think the sense of entitlement from Graham Plattner that he deserved inherently a role in shaping the process to replace him was pretty clear. And if you watched his video announcing his decision to exit the race, I mean, it was a long video with a lot of sense that he had built this movement and that movement needed to be respected. And I think the implicit thing was that his role specifically needed to be respected. And I think that video turned a lot of people off, even people who might have been sympathetic to him, really alienated them just because of the tone of it. So I think among folks who were trying to protect the integrity of that process as much as they can, there was a real sense of alarm that, we cannot have a situation where, the guy who needs to drop out, who everyone recognizes has to drop out, he's kind of holding the process hostage, because the replacement process only works if he decides to drop out. And there was a lot of worry. He says he's going to drop out on Wednesday, but then he has until Monday at 5 p.m. to actually file the paperwork. Is he going to do it? There was this whole honestly kind of
Hamlet.
tortured meta conversation around, is he going to do it? What happens if he doesn't do it? Whose fault is it if he takes too long? I mean, it was a whole thing, but I do think the main Democratic Party, you could really tell that they had quite enough with the way that Graham Plattner was going. And there was, I guess, a dispute between, Graham Plattner's campaign saying, oh, no, we were not trying to influence the process. We just wanted to know how it was going. And the main Democratic Party releasing some it's rare to see this in politics, a party direct to camera on record calling out a candidate, basically saying, nope, he was unduly trying to influence this process. To be clear, he's going to have no role in this process. We need this to be as public and transparent and fair as possible. And look, I think they know at the end of the day, if it's perceived that Graham Plattner has a role in this, it's not going to be good for them.
Sam Brodey of the Boston Globe, thank you so much for your excellent reportage on this. Are you going to miss writing about Graham Plattner? Are you ready to write about some new people for a while?
I have written so many articles about Graham Plattner, and I suspect it may not be the last time I've written about Graham Plattner in this election cycle. We'll see how it goes, but there's so much to say in this race, so I'm excited for the next chapter.
Thank you for your excellent journalism. What's the best way for our listeners to follow you and keep up with your work?
Go to thebostonglobe.com and look for me and look for our political team's great coverage of this race.
Thank you so much, sir. What a pleasure having you. We're going to take a quick break. Back with your calls in just a moment. This is Sirius XM Progress.
Hi, and welcome back. Just 923 days left to go in our countdown to liberty. Today, Donald Trump has been missing in action after golfing yesterday. No one's really seen or heard from him today, except to say that he really misses his friend Lindsey Graham, who apparently died early this morning because of an aortic dissection caused by arterial sclerosis. Boy, I got that one out. Meanwhile, Mitch McConnell begged by the governor of the state of Kentucky for proof of life, sent a statement out today along with a picture with him and his wife. And according to one reporter inside the White House pool, because of the way we live today, we can't be sure that somebody didn't poison Lindsey Graham and that what we saw of Mitch McConnell was an AI-generated photo. What a world we live in. Meanwhile, the Senate is in trouble for the Republicans. They're at least one vote down and maybe two. And it was not Mitch McConnell, but Lindsey Graham who was able to reach across the aisle for the Republicans, meaning this is going to be one very interesting long summer and one hot fall. See you next time.
Today is the birthday of Harrison Ford. He is 84 years old. It's also the birthday of Patrick Stewart. He is 86 years old. And happy birthday to some friends of this show, the great Roger McGuinn of the Byrds, born in the state in 1942, one of our favorite guests, and Mr. Cameron Crowe, a good friend of this show, celebrating a birthday today as well. We are at 866-997-4748, 866-997-GRIT. Martin Sheen joining us in the next hour. Let's go to your calls. It's going to be nice to talk to some of you guys in the daytime. Selena is calling from Arizona on line 3. Selena, hello and welcome. You're on Progress.
Hi, good afternoon, John. How are you doing today?
Great to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to just say good afternoon, good morning for me, and I am waking and baking to you today. It's going to be a fine day with you today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have someone wake and bake to me. That's great.
Oh, well, you know what? I have a feeling I'm not the only one.
I have a feeling you're not. It's a bright new future.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Well, you know what Ben Franklin said. A bong hit a day, I forget the rest. I think that's the quote. I think that's what he said. But go on.
Oh, I was going to say better living through chemistry.
Well, that'll work too. What's on your mind this morning, Selena?
I just wanted to call and say good afternoon to you, and I'm going to be taking you to the pool with me today. You and the crew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I'm gonna be. Yeah, you guys are gonna be at the pool with me today.
I'll tell Chris and Thea. Great.
Yeah, let them know. Tell them to put their sunscreen on. You know, and
thank you.
And I'm not talking any. Huh?
That's new for us, I guess. People don't usually listen to our old show at the pool at midnight. So I'm glad to hear it, Selena. Thank you.
No, I was scared to take you guys. Remember with the snakes in the pool over here? So,
yes.
Yeah, I was a little sketchy to take you, but now I'm not afraid because it's a beautiful day here in Tucson, and so you guys are going to the pool with me, and I'm not going to be talking. Yeah, and then I'm not going to be talking any smack about Lindsey Graham's passing. You know, I'm in a different place, so I'm just not going to be talking any smack.
We don't need to. Yeah, we can just, the facts are good enough. Facts are good enough.
Exactly. He lived his life, and we know how the decisions he made, and that's it. He
lived long enough to see his dream come true of a war in Iran with thousands killed. So he got that. Most of us don't have our number one dream come true in life.
No. We never see our goal and our dream come true. That's right. And he was very, very lucky. He's flying on angel's wings right now. And I will be talking about that whole, weekend at Bernie's in Kentucky, though. That is some interesting shit, and I think that's AI, and I don't trust it. I do not trust it at all.
What's remarkable is how many conservative brothers and sisters don't believe it as well. Going on social media, conservative, right wing. I don't know if are there still conservatives? There's a few of them, right? There's a few. You got some conservatives in Arizona. We have some in New York, but right wing people are going nuts on the conspiracy theories, both about Lindsey Graham and about Mitch McConnell. I mean, it's an industry. I swear to God, it's like if you could find a way to harness the power of rumors and online political smears, we wouldn't need the Green New Deal. But we'll find out. It's all still very sketch with McConnell, and I don't wish harm on anyone. I hope he's okay. I don't think he wants to go to that great terrarium in the sky just yet. But the whole thing has been very suspect, and I find the photo rather suspect as well.
I do too. There's just something. It's too crisp. It's too clean. It's just there's no blurs. There's nothing.
I'm on the side of Governor Beshear. Governor Andy Beshear, who I do shows with on this channel, who has called for better proof of life. And how about a video? How about just a video holding today's paper? How about something? But again,
old school, yes, like in
Mitch
Midnight
McConnell's
Run.
Yes, Mitch McConnell's entire political career has been defined by underhanded political maneuverings, and I feel like his passing is wrapped up in one as well. Selena, thank you for taking us to the pool. Chris and Thea, appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome. You have a great day.
Have a great one. Thank you so much. 866-997-GRIT. Let's go to Tim in Massachusetts on line 5. Tim, hello and welcome. You're on Progress.
Good afternoon, John, and welcome back to afternoon radio, I guess.
It's nice to be back in the afternoons. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, well, I'm still working, so there's no waking and or baking here, so...
Okay, same.
Okay. As far as Graham goes, first of all, everything you said in your monologue is what you've said in prior monologues when he was alive, so good for you there.
Yeah.
And as far as any snark comments or creative comments, when I saw the one that said if they were wondering if it was going to be an open closet funeral, I knew I was done.
Very funny.
So
That's a good one. That's a good one. Listen, I've heard there's so many jokes about all the flags at Grindr headquarters being at half-mast. It's one of those occasions when everyone's coming up with the same jokes. So, and some of them are funny. I don't believe in saying things that are mean. I don't believe in being mean and cruel, but if you could have a devastatingly witty riposte, I'm open to hearing it. I'm open to it.
Yeah, and as far as speculating on what his afterlife might be like,
wow.
Well, I think I've said on the show before, I stand somewhere between a lapsed Catholic and an aspiring agnostic, but still that kind of stuff has a judge not lest he be judged vibe to it. That's all.
I agree. I don't know where any of us are going. I just know wherever Donald Trump winds up going, I know that Roy Cohn and Jeff Epstein will be waiting there for him. Tim, thank you so much for calling. It's good to hear from you. We're at 866. Thank you. 997-4748.
Well, most customers aren't waiting around for a callback, right? Maybe they're trying to book an appointment. Maybe they're looking for a quote. Maybe they just need help now. Whatever it is, if nobody answers, they're calling the next business on the list. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the business phone system built so you never, ever miss a call. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by over 90,000 businesses who rely on it to stay reachable and look professional every single day. Set it up in minutes on any device, keep your existing number, and add teammates as you grow. No hassle, right? No IT. Q's built-in AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers questions, and even books appointments so you never miss a lead even when your team is offline. Money is on the line line. That's important. Always say hello with Quo. Once again, that's QUO. Try Quo for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/Stephanie. That's QUO.com/Stephanie.
We are again at 866-997-4748. Martin Sheen's going to join us this hour. I want to ask about something, though. How many times are we as Americans supposed to watch the same story before we admit there is a pattern? A man in Texas leaves for work before sunrise. He picks up his crew. He never comes home. And then the government's press release arrives before any evidence about his death does. Now, according to ICE, Lorenzo Salgado Araujo weaponized his vehicle. That was their words, weaponized his vehicle. It's amazing how the government can always solve the case before any investigation ever starts, you know? Now we're learning he wasn't even the target. These guys were looking for somebody else and followed him. Can you imagine that? Imagine getting killed because somebody in your van looked like somebody else. So where are the body cameras? Oh, right. That agency that we pay for, that just received tens of billions of taxpayer dollars, somehow could not afford the one thing that might tell us what actually happened, and a father of 3 is dead. It's funny how accountability is always the first budget item they can't squeeze in. You know, no body cameras, no independent evidence, no transparency from these guys. Just another government statement from the Trump administration telling us to trust the people whose actions are being investigated and to ignore another dead body. This is not how accountability works. This is how cover-ups work. And then it gets worse, much worse, because the 3 detained witnesses in the car with him say that the agent opened fire almost immediately and that no officer was ever in Lorenzo's path. The only eyewitnesses who can tell us what happened, these 3 guys in the car, but they're right now reportedly, according to their lawyer, being pressured by ICE to sign self-deportation papers so the Trump White House can exile them before they can ever testify. Really? The witnesses? You're deporting the witnesses before any investigators can question them. Guys, this is not immigration enforcement. This is deleting the surveillance footage before the trial. It's kind of tricky to convince people that you're searching for truth while you're trying to make the eyewitnesses disappear, isn't it? If the government's version of events is the truth, wouldn't you want witnesses? Wouldn't you want every angle? Wouldn't you want testimony? Unless the witnesses are a problem. ICE says Lorenzo Araujo rammed their vehicle. That is not true. From the surveillance footage we have seen, it's not true at all. It's the opposite. The ICE vehicle struck his van. Again, no body cameras. It's convenient. Oh, they got assault rifles. They got armored vehicles. They got facial recognition software, these guys. They got drones. They got helicopters. They got tactical gear. Oh, they couldn't afford the GoPros, bro. Sorry. Yeah, no record of it. Every time there's another fatal encounter, every time these masked, coward, godless thugs kill another citizen, it's the same script. He was dangerous. He resisted. We feared for our lives. Like the lady in the car. And then the more facts emerge, more videos emerge, more witnesses emerge, and then again, the government's original story starts falling apart. I can't really wait long enough for a Democratic president to make Jack Smith our Attorney General in 2029. But here's the thing, friends. If your first statement keeps changing every week, then it wasn't the truth. It was damage control. Lorenzo Salgado Araujo lived in this country for 35 years. He raised 3 American sons, put them all through college, ran a construction business, employed so many people, paid his taxes, built homes, chased exactly the same American dream these politicians pretend to celebrate every 4th of July. And then one morning, agents looking for somebody else shot this grandpa dead. And now his family wants answers. And that is not a radical request. That's not woke. That is the minimum requirement in a constitutional democracy. Why? Friends, why should we accept the word of masked, nameless government coward agents who killed another unarmed person, who didn't bother to record it, and now won't release the evidence they claim would support their story? Are you tired of this yet, friends? If lethal force was justified, prove it. Show the footage. Release the evidence. Let independent investigators examine it. Trust us, bro, isn't good enough anymore, friends. Not after so many cases where the first official version couldn't survive contact with facts. Renee Good, Alex Preddy, we've seen this already. The publicly available footage. Go look for it yourself. It does not show Lorenzo Araujo attempting to ram an ICE vehicle or strike an agent. You know why? Because Lorenzo Araujo didn't want to get shot or go to jail. He was trying to go to work. We already know they had the wrong guy. ICE keeps repeating the allegation. And repeating lies only convinces people who watch a lot of Fox News. Look, law enforcement, how do I say this right? Law enforcement deserves the public trust when it's earned, right? Trust isn't automatic. Trust is built through transparency. Anything else is obedience. Trust is built through evidence, through accountability. You're trying to deport the witnesses before anyone can hear their testimony. Don't be surprised, Republicans, when people decide you're more interested in controlling the narrative than learning the truth. My God, Jesus Christ, how these people hate Jesus Christ. A government confident in their actions won't hide evidence, and it won't rush to shape the narrative, and it really won't try to put eyewitnesses on the next flight out of the country. Do not let them deport these three men before an independent investigation can hear their evidence. Because justice isn't just about what happened. In this administration, justice is about whether we're even allowed to know what happened. We want to know what you guys think. We are at 866-997-4748. 866-997-GRIT. Let's go to Carol on line 6, who's been waiting in Los Angeles. Carol, thank you so much for your patience and welcome. You're on Sirius XM.
Hello, Dean. Hello,
hey.
Dean. I'm not Dean.
I'm sorry, I'm not Dean.
John.
Yes. Hi. We're very similar. We look just alike.
No, you don't. My telephone tells me you're Dean.
Okay. Dean's much better looking.
We met in December on the nation's cruise.
Oh, right on. Thank you, Carol.
Yeah. Oh, I was so impressed, and I had already read your book. And then when I went out to when we were in San Francisco, I dashed around San Francisco and found the last copy of the book to give to my evangelical girlfriend. I gave it out to numbers of people. The middle-of-the-road Presbyterians loved it, and
I'm glad.
I never heard a word back from her. So
that my book is not for everyone, love. I do not recommend giving my book to hardcore right-wing Christians. It's for people who have to deal with right-wing Christians.
She's not hardcore, but she's a nice woman, and she doesn't. I mean, she's not Christian nationalist or anything, but she's definitely evangelical. And I was curious, but let me tell you, I listen to The Oath in the Office every week. I love that show.
Thank you.
You are doing a wonderful job, and he is just masterful. And I'm so
it's all him. It's all him. I'm just his. He's the whole thing. I'm Zeppo. He's Groucho, Chico, and Harpo on that show. I'm just Zeppo, holding up the sets.
You add so
but thank
much.
you.
No, but you do. And I'm excited about your new book because I will buy it in a minute. You know that.
Thank you.
And I'm sad about Thom. I've been listening to Thom since Air America. Back in the early 2000s.
Listen, don't be sad. Don't be sad. You can still hear Thom's show. Thom is the best radio host in the world. I'm not pretending otherwise. But Thom's show,
no question.
He's still airing on terrestrial radio and on Free Speech TV, and you can hear him on demand and on the app here as well.
Yeah, I'll listen to his podcast because I don't do. The reason I wasn't listening to your night show was I don't do night. I'm an old lady.
Okay.
Anyway,
I understand.
I did want to know, have you had any impressions about those, not the crazy Christian nationalists, but the right-wing evangelicals? Have you had is there a difference? Have you had any impression that any of them understand?
Conservative Christians can engage with you thoughtfully and discuss Scripture thoughtfully and discuss what you can sit with a conservative Christian and discuss what Jesus actually commands and what conservative Christianity actually fights for. Right-wing Christianity, you can't do that. They will attack you and hate you and call you names and prove how little they read the Jesus parts in the first place. Conservatives, you know how it is. Conservative people you can generally reason with. Right-wing people, not so much. And they'll always find new excuses to call themselves Christian and say they're better Christians than you and better than everybody else, but not have to follow the Jesus teachings. That's the thing with right-wing Christianity. Just ask them, give me one teaching of Jesus, chapter and verse, that justifies Trump support. And you'll find out pretty quickly, Carol, how little they know that book. They wave over their heads so bombastically.
Well, I've been on Dr. Daft's show. She is a Christian psychotherapist, and she's had me on twice, atheists versus the Christians. Last month it was 13 atheists against one Christian. And it's pointless to really talk about
it's a dumb argument to me.
What the Christian message is, because all there is they're argumentative and they just are convinced. I was in the green room afterwards, and I heard these young girls say, "How old is that old lady?" And somebody said, "Oh, I don't know. She's up in her 80s, I think." And it's too bad she only has a little time to find Jesus. You know?
Oh, Lord. Yeah, but see, here's the thing. Jesus is a prop for these people, Carol. These people are probably very nice folks who've been told their whole life that they're Christian and they go to church and they pray and they accept Jesus as their Savior, but they don't really read the Jesus parts. And it's really easy to say that you're a Christian if you put up a tree in your house once a year and you think you're better than Muslims. But the reality is the Jesus of the Bible is someone that conservative Christians do not follow. They use him. They use him for power. They use him to claim that they are more moral and better than other folks. They don't follow the teachings. They fight for conservative Christian control of America. But the Jesus of the Bible is a man who says that individuals and nations will be judged, heaven or hell, by how they care for the poor, care for the sick, welcome the stranger, and care for those in prison. The Jesus of the Bible treats women as equals. He breaks the laws of his own religion to treat women as equals. Jesus of the Bible says to pay your taxes, and he's against the death penalty. He says you're not allowed to hate anybody, and you have to love your oppressors. And again, the entire Bible is commanding us to welcome the stranger. They don't want to follow it, Carol. They want to use it. So it's very, very easy to separate the Christ followers from the fake Christians. And that's what we have to start doing. Because if we don't separate the frauds from the real people, then we are putting MLK in the same basket as the KKK, right? MLK and KKK, both Christian. They both claim to follow the Bible. They both claim authority from the Bible. But they're in different universes. There's no way you can look at Dr. King and the Klan and say these are equal representations of the same thing. One followed the teachings of Jesus, which is what all the cool ones do. St. Francis, Dorothy Day, Bishop Tutu. And then one used Christianity to argue that they're better than others. When you convince people that Christianity is about accepting Jesus' divinity, and then your sins are forgiven, but not about his very inconvenient liberal teachings, then you can see how Christians get behind slavery and women as second-class citizens and stealing the land from the Indians. That wasn't the Christ followers who did it. It was the fake fucking Christians. And that's who I like to call out.
I mean, I typify it as left-wing, right-wing. To me, I'm an atheist, but I am very connected to my Episcopalians, my Unitarians, my Quakers, my Reformed Jews. We work together because we all welcome the stranger, and you know, to me, the bonobos welcome the stranger, and that's what all of the Christian and all of the religious teachings teach. You know, love thy neighbor, do unto others. All of them teach that because that's our bonobo app. You know,
exactly right.
Bonobos welcome the stranger. Chimpanzees eat them.
That's true. You know what, bonobos? Little too much incest in the bonobo world, but yeah, we can do that. They don't believe in violence, but that's the distinction, Carol. There's the people who are actually following Jesus, and you don't need to be a Christian to actually walk that path. And some of the best Christians I've ever known have been atheists, and some of the most defiled blasphemers have bragged about their Christianity.
Sexy Liberal. This year, one show only in Southern California.
Hollywood, the city of magic.
Saturday, October 24th in L.A. One night, one chance. Let's get it right. The Sexy Liberal Show returns to the Saban Theater. One night only, October 24th. Starring Stephanie Miller.
Give it up for yourselves, LA Sexy Liberals. God bless you.
John Fugelsang.
Cable news, it should be called the stuff they air between Viagra and Cialis ads.
Comedy duo Frangela.
You're the kind of good white folks who adopt black babies. Yes. And not because they're cheaper.
And outrageous Hal Sparks.
Believe me, I have a lot of liberal friends who love this country enough to vote almost every other election.
Special VIP meet and grope tickets for palling around with the stars after the show at the Saban in Beverly Hills.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Only one Sexy Liberal show in 2026. Saturday, October 24th at the Saban Theater in Beverly Hills. Tickets on sale now at sexyliberal.com.
One of my favorite human beings alive to listen to on acting, on politics, and on spirituality joins us, and he's probably got the best damn podcast I've come across in years. You know Mr. Martin Sheen as an actor from films like The Subject Was Roses and Badlands, or let's throw in Apocalypse Now, Gandhi, Gettysburg, The Departed, The Amazing Spider-Man, or even playing J. Edgar Hoover in Judas and the Black Messiah. He also, of course, is an Emmy-winning actor and won Golden Globe and 2 Screen Actors Guild Awards for a little-seen independent show called The West Wing. But off-screen, Mr. Sheen has spent decades speaking out on issues of war, justice, poverty, human rights, and nonviolent activism. And his new podcast is something, it's not like anything you've heard. Rather than just focusing on celebrity interviews or political rants, Martin invites you into conversations about literature, art, faith, conscience, history, and the moral imagination through his beautiful readings of poetry and essays and speeches and deeply personal reflections. Martin, it's a real pleasure. Welcome back to Sirius XM, and thank you.
Oh, John, I didn't know who you were talking about there for a second. I want to tune into this guy. How are you? Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, I'm always honored whenever you join us, and I really was happy to talk about the podcast, Martin, because I can't tell you how much it's gotten me through a rough year. This is not another celebrity podcast. You and Renee and the people at MSW have really put together. It's like a meditation. It's part audiobook. It's part memoir. It's part civics lesson, and it's part prayer. How did you arrive at this format? I'm sure they were after you to do a podcast for years, but there's nothing like this.
Well, in fact, it didn't start out with a clear goal in mind. It was like, let's take what, we all believe and what we feel about things and where we've been and what we've done and how we've made choices that changed our lives or led us in a different direction. And I thought, let's put all that together. And it's all a personal journey. I call it a pilgrimage. And so I invite people to share their pilgrimage with us. And we've been going along. We're now in our 4th season. They call 10 shows a season. So we just finished our 3rd season, and we're well into the 4th season that starts again in August. August 2nd is the first show of the 4th season. So,
oh, beautiful.
Yeah, it's been going along very nicely, I'm happy to say. I was listening a little bit to your previous guest. I thought it was interesting about what defines us as Christians. And
yes, sir.
One of my favorite quotes from Gandhi, not many people would want to hear it, but his quote was, "We shouldn't be too critical of Christianity. It's never been tried."
Yeah, it's true. It's true. There's one guy did it, and look what happened to him. But yes.
No, if you give serious attention to Christianity, you're going to end up in some kind of good trouble.
Well, absolutely. But you're one of the people that has meant so much to me in my life because you know this, Martin. There's so few places in mainstream media where you hear people talking about Christianity with any kind of intelligence or integrity. It tends to be a lot of very, flowery Lifetime movie kind of churchy talk, but not real any depth. And since you mentioned Gandhi, I want to ask you about that because you did a very personal episode of the podcast that kind of blew me away, and it's Exhibit A and why this is not like any other show. You describe arriving in India, expecting to make a movie with Richard Attenborough, and then you left with an entirely different understanding of yourself. I mean, what happened to you in India while you were making a film about poverty and one of our great moral leaders?
Yeah, well, it just really got my attention. You know, the poverty that we visited really was very overwhelming. I'd been in third world countries before, but never anything to this extent. And it just went right to the center of my being and just made me question all of my own personal values. And I'm reminded of what the founder of the Homeboy Industries here in Los Angeles, Father Greg Boyle, was asked what motivated him to do such great social justice work and such, you know, in the center of his life was about service. And he said, well, I went into the third world and they cracked open my heart. And that's kind of what happened to me in India, and Emilio as well. Both of us came out of India with a whole different sense of what it means to be a human being and what it means to be human in the first world, and how we need to find ourselves in the third world. And you don't have to leave our country. There's plenty of third world in America.
True. It's so true.
That demands our attention and our service. And so, that did it for me. I left India in February of 1981, and I went almost immediately to Paris to do a film. And that's where I reconverted to Catholicism while I was working on a film called Enigma in Paris. And I just want to mention, because I just learned this morning, my co-star in that film was Sam Neill, who I just learned passed away this morning, I'm sorry to say. And he was one of the great people. He was part of my conversion as well, and the most generous and sweet, dear man with a great sense of humor and a great acting talent. So I always thought I'd work with him again, and unfortunately that's not going to happen, but I was delighted that I had that opportunity.
He was a beautiful actor. I mean, you never caught him acting. The film Dead Calm, he's just incredible in every frame with barely any dialogue. And I didn't know that. I knew that you'd made Enigma with him. I liked that film. I didn't know that he was part of your spiritual experience.
Yeah,
I mean,
he put me in the place, literally. He was living at a hotel on the left bank called, no pun intended, called the Hotel Lennox. And it was this very unique, small, kind of out-of-the-way hotel. And he had a duplex on the top floor. And I was having dinner with him one night, and he said, let me show you where I live. It's pretty great. We went upstairs, and I said, oh, my God, I'd love to have a place like this. And he said, it's yours. I said, no, Sam, I couldn't. Yeah, he said, sure, it's yours. He moved out the next day at my insistence. At his insistence, I moved in, and it became like a great safe place, and I cherished the time there. I ran into to Terrence Malick again,
yes.
And we renewed our acquaintance, and Terry kind of picked up where Sam left off, and he became, for lack of a better word or a different word, which he would disagree with, I'm sure, but he became a spiritual advisor and led me to my true self, and that led to my rejoining the Catholic faith. But I didn't join a faith of piety or fear.
Correct.
That I grew up in mostly. I joined the faith of activism and social justice, and the last 40-plus years of my life have been by far the most difficult and equally the happiest. So
I'd like to ask you about that, because I love the Terrence Malick part of it. You know, Martin, I when people ask me what my religious beliefs are, I say go watch Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life, whatever that movie is. That's what I believe. Okay. But it's a deeply Catholic film, and you know, you had this hunger for social justice in your heart before this, right? I know that when I look at you, I always think that your spirituality fuels your activism. Is that fair to say, or is it the other way around?
I'd say you can't separate that. I think that term that we're all looking for to find our true selves, and when we find that, and we're as uncomfortable as we should be, because I'm never comfortable unless I'm uncomfortable, because then I know I'm doing something right,
Right.
So that's what it meant to me, and that I began to become involved in social justice activism. And I learned from the Berrigan brothers on the East Coast, who really taught me about social justice activism. And the primary thing they taught me was, you are not going to change the world, but you may change yourself. And in so doing, the world is changed. So you don't have to focus outside of the action you're doing, wherever you're doing it, as long as it is an honest attempt to bring attention to some social justice issue, whatever it is. And you really can't separate any social justice issue, whether it's homelessness or addiction or war, whatever all of the issues we face today. You can't separate any of them. At the core, they're all springing from the same source. And so whenever we stand with the poor or with the immigrant population that is now under such attack, we're standing where our founder stood. And it's going to be costly. If it's not costly, we're left to question its value. And so that's what I learned from the Berrigans and from early protest on the East Coast. And we always knew when there was someone among us who was not of the same the same intention. They never knew the hymns or the prayers.
Oh, yeah.
We always knew they were plants.
To me, this is amazing because, like, I grew up with my dad revered the Berrigans, and I love your podcast episode about Father Daniel Berrigan, because this guy wasn't just a priest. He was one of America's most famous practitioners of nonviolent civil disobedience. And what always amazes me is how he seemed joyful despite all the arrests and all the imprisonment. But he accepted punishment for his actions, and you've participated in many acts of nonviolent civil disobedience yourself, Mr. Sheen. You've been arrested. How do you decide when breaking the law becomes a moral obligation?
Well, it's really clear when there are so many examples surrounding us in any direction we look these days, that there is there's no sense of equal justice for everyone. So that draws us to who's not getting a fair shake, and we just go in that area. I think in New York it started. Dorothy Days started the Catholic Worker back during the Depression, and it's still, there's so many, so many wonderful Catholic worker houses of hospitality and service around the country, and they do a sense of service that they don't separate. As I was just talking about how, they have just here in Los Angeles, the LA Catholic Worker has a soup kitchen downtown on 6th and Gladys. They serve 3 or 4 meals a week. They have a house of hospitality in Los Angeles, and they are in constant public displays of, currently against the ICE enforcement against the immigrants and such brutal treatment of our immigrant friends. And so that's kind of ideal, because they have found this way to unite the will of the Spirit with the work of the flesh. And that's kind of something we're all looking for, is that we can do something with our hands and our feet, and it satisfies, it leads us to our spirit. And so the two are united in that effort to serve, where our service is our prayer and our prayer is our service, So would you say that the word with the Catholic Worker is worker? It's a very demanding commitment, you know.
It's a prayer of action.
Wonderful community, yeah. All over the country, there are these Catholic worker houses of hospitality, and they stand with those marginalized people in all of the communities across the country, particularly now with the emphasis on the rounding up of so many of our immigrant friends, you know.
Yes.
And you know, I'm not unaware of that. Both of my parents were immigrants. My father was from Spain, my mother from Ireland, and I grew up as the first generation Americans, and I saw what prejudice towards immigrants can do, particularly with my father. And it had a profound effect on all of us. You know, there were 10 of us. My mother actually had 12 pregnancies. 10 survived. There were 9 boys and 1 girl, and I grew up in this house of activity and commitment.
Yeah.
And I was a caddy from the time I was 9 until I left home at age 18. So I worked with every year from early spring till late fall at the local country club, a very exclusive country club, and you know, carried the bags for a lot of these men and women who were privileged, and a few of them were conscious, you know, but most of them were not. They were comfortable in their own lives, and they were not very happy, and sometimes they were totally unaware of us because we were servants to them, and so I learned an awful lot from them, and I learned what not to be, what not to look forward to.
Right.
So I was enormously grateful to them, all of them, you know.
I mean, that's true Christianity.
There were enough among them that made it pleasant, who didn't take themselves seriously or their golf game, but they just enjoyed playing that silly game as a social kind of exercise, and particularly when they played together, you know, Sundays was always fun because the women would play with their husbands, and they were totally different then. You know, butter wouldn't melt in their mouth, you know. You get them on Wednesdays or Saturday. It was a totally different story, you know.
You know, I love that you're covering these subjects on the podcast, because I've been saying for years, like, I wish Americans knew about Dorothy Day. I wish they knew about the Berrigans. These are the heroes we need right now, especially in a time when, I mean, we've discussed this. I think a lot of people are feeling much more comfortable calling themselves spiritual than religious because of all the hypocrisies and cruelties we've seen organized religion that has nothing to do with Jesus' teachings perpetrate. And so what I see you doing is just, you know, you're really walking the walk the way that Dorothy Day did. You know, real Christianity is not about domination. It's about humility and service. And I just want to thank you for reminding me of that.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, I read your book, John. I did your show some months ago. So you were a great inspiration to a whole nation, frankly. And,
thank you.
Your latest book, I know you have a new one coming out, but the one I read some months ago is just absolutely stunning, and how you went right to the center. And you did it with such humor and compassion and understanding, but with such truth and simple, direct, honest evaluation of the scriptures and the scripture stories, and what our founder was really saying, and what he was really doing, and how costly it was, and how you know, we're called to you know, to follow that light, and it is a very, very powerful light. And when you embrace it, and you don't expect anything more than just a personal kind of invitation to become your true self, that's when it's a very humbling experience. And, you know, I have my problems with the church. You know, it's run by men.
Sure.
It's a lot of old rules and whatnot, but the church is the place to go forth from. That's what Reverend King taught us. And,
nice.
And it's still the truth. You know, I love the faith. The church is an organization, as I say. I love it. I love the faith, but sometimes it doesn't really take the step that is necessary outside the building, outside the rectory. And
but do you like this new? Do you like this new guy, Martin? Leo and after Francis. I mean, this is a very different kind of pope than I grew up with. These guys aren't about sexual shame. These guys aren't about abortion or being mean to gays. They're about opposing war, human. Helping the poor. Right.
Exactly. They're present to those who need them most. And our present Pope Leo is a great example of leadership. And the pressure's on. He's the first and only American ever to occupy the papacy, right. And so he's done such an extraordinary job, and he's taken his licks, and he has not said anything in defense of what he does, except the scriptures. He said, "I'm only doing what Christ asked me to do."
That's it. Yeah.
I stand here with the immigrants. I stand here with the poor. I stand here with the outcast. I stand where I'm supposed to stand. And if I get knocked over, well, I'm still among them.
Ooh, J.D. Vance is furious.
He ended the schism. That started.
Yeah.
So. And he just didn't hesitate. He said, "If you do, I'm talking about last week."
Oh yeah, the right wing guys. He just fired them.
Yeah, the Saint Pius X.
Yes.
It's called the SSPX, oddly enough. But this very conservative group that began around 1970, opposed to the changes from Vatican II. They want to keep the Latin Mass, they're in love with the rubric and the piety of it, and the performance of it. I know what that's about. I was an altar boy through my youth. In our local church, I learned the Latin, and I loved the ceremonial aspect of the Mass and the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament and the processions and all that.
The theater.
He said very theatrical, and it's wonderful. But it doesn't always work in the ghetto, You have to put your work clothes on and carry the sacrament in your heart when you go into, the neighborhoods that need us the most.
Yeah, it's not about preaching us.
So, we have to go into the ghetto of our own hearts and repair the damage that we've caused ourselves. But, he excommunicated this bunch. And they're going to, and he's the first pope to do it, of course. Francis was very, compassionate and willing to keep dialogue going. But this, Leo said, this is not going anywhere, and it stops here with me. So
he's an aggressive progressive.
The church is stunned by what he did, but he could not do it and be true to the faith itself. It's not about being pious or pontificating. It's about being human, and the more human we become, the more we realize how we're all attached to one another, and how we can only find ourselves really through each other. So we are drawn towards that light in people we see, and and we see this enviable joy, and we want to be a part of that, and that's what I saw in the Barragans. That's what I saw in John the 23rd, and so many. I see it in you.
But people see it in you, right? People see it in you, too. I mean, and I want to tell you, I want to thank you for your July 4th episode, because so many folks were so down about America's 250th anniversary. And I told quite a few of my friends, if you're down about it, go listen to this podcast episode, because instead of celebrating America through slogans, you celebrate America through writers. You weave together Helen Keller and Hamilton and Longfellow and Catherine Lee Bates and Abraham Lincoln. Yeah. It was beautiful. How did you curate that?
The second inaugural address, which few people know, the last...
His greatest speech.
It's probably his greatest speech, and it's not known except for those phrases at the end with charity towards all and malice towards none. That's the most famous section of it, but he gets, from the beginning of it, he talks about slavery and why the war was fought, and how we refused to take responsibility for it, so we laid it off on God. It's God's will and so forth, and how we abused our sense of being a Christian nation by blaming God for our own inefficiencies and our own darkness and prejudices. And he made it clear you can't lay it off on the Almighty. We have to, and John Kennedy's phrase, the last phrase of his inaugural address, God's work must truly be our own. And
I love it.
Yeah, there you have it.
You know, let me ask you one final question, Mr. Sheen, and then I'll let you go. And thank you for being so generous.
If you don't call me Martin, I'm going to hang up.
Martin, thank you for coming to play on our first day. It's great having you on live, by the way. You're really good at this. Here's what I've been meaning to ask you this for a while, and this again ties together for me the spirituality and the creativity, the craft, and the political activism. Do democracies require artists, Martin, not just entertainers, but artists who can remind us who we are?
Yeah, absolutely, because the artist sees through. So much of what we do is surface, and so the artist is required to see through. And that's why we read poetry, why we sing songs, why we read books, why we go to movies, why we look at shows that inspire us, because the artist is saying, don't look at me, look at yourself through me. And they reflect the very best and the very worst part of our humanity. And that's how we learn, I think, and so how the real political heroes were we have saints, and, we had a couple in the White House. One of them was Abraham Lincoln, for heaven's sakes, He didn't profess any specific religion, but boy, oh boy, did he have a moral compass.
He was about the service, Yeah,
very much so, yeah. I want to remind you, your listeners, really, today is your son's feast day.
Yes.
In the Catholic calendar today, the 13th of July, is the feast of St. Henry. And your son's name is Henry, so this is really his birthday.
This is how I knew we were in luck.
Happy birthday for me.
I will. Everybody, Martin Sheen gave my son a rosary, which I never did because I'm a terrible Catholic, but you did it. And
no
honestly, when you told me that this day was St. Henry's Day, I thought, well, okay, it's meant to happen. Before I let you go, I want to read you really quick. We got a note from one of our fellow producers here, Erin at SiriusXM, who's just the biggest fan of yours. She told me she was never into politics, but watching reruns of West Wing awoke in her civic mind. And she wanted me to ask you, in this time when so many of us feel that we're in a confrontation with, if not evil, just our loved ones who have been deluded by evil or deceived by darkness.
Yeah.
How do we meet this moment as being good people and not give in to the hate?
Fear. It's governed by fear. Fear is useless. Faith is necessary. Love is everything. That's the best advice I can give anyone. Nice. That's what I accept myself. It's fear. As long as we're afraid, we don't move. We let all of our inspiration and our humanity sit idly, and then we regret not having spoken out, and we regret not having moved or having gotten up and just added our voice, sometimes just by standing up, just by being present to someone in trouble, just by reaching out. We draw others to us and to what we're doing. And it's not an accident. It takes a lot of courage sometimes to stand up in the darkest times. But it's about the fear that governs us. It's not about anyone in power. They have the power. They don't have the right. And so we know what the right is, and we know where we stand morally, and we know what we would not personally do, that we see some agencies of our government doing, and that's when we know to move and to stand with those in danger. And so it's about just facing our fear. It's not an individual. It's not that guy whom I refuse to name now because that's all he wants is us to have his name on our lips continuously. He is insatiable about being recognized, but he can't. And his, this most grievous application of this, so fundamentally immoral, was his grave robbery.
That's it.
For the Kennedy Center. He put his name on a grave. That's a memorial to one of our great heroes.
That's right.
John Kennedy, who sacrificed his life for the good of the world. And he wants to be a part of that. And he sees this enviable joy in his life, which he'll never be a part of because he can't realize himself. He projects fear, not inspiration, not joy. There's not a laugh in him. There's no jizz in him. So he grabs other people's jizz, but he put his name on somebody else's gravestone. It's grave robbery.
That's it, man.
You can't be John Kennedy. You can't share that. No. Sorry, Donald, but you'll have to find your own temple.
Amen.
You can be
Martin
celebrated.
Sheen. Yeah. Amen. Martin Sheen is the host of the Martin Sheen podcast. And friends, if you are ever down, I promise you this is better for you than any antidepressant. Martin, I didn't even ask you any Brando stories or Hollywood stories, but I thank you for not saying that other guy's name. And I thank you for inspiring me in so many new ways. And I want to thank President Bartlett for never tearing down the East Wing of the White House. That was really nice. Thank you.
They would have impeached me had I done it.
Sexy Liberal. This year, one show only in Southern California.
Hollywood, the city of magic.
Saturday, October 24th in L.A. One night, one chance. Let's get it right. The Sexy Liberal show returns to the Saban Theater. One night only, October 24th. Starring Stephanie Miller.
Give it up for yourselves, LA Sexy Liberals. God bless you.
John Fugelsang.
Cable news, it should be called the stuff they air between Viagra and Cialis ads.
Comedy duo Frangela.
You're the kind of good white folks who adopt black babies. Yes. And not because they're cheaper.
And outrageous Hal Sparks.
Believe me, I have a lot of liberal friends who love this country enough to vote almost every other election.
Special VIP meet and group tickets for palling around with the stars after the show at the Saban in Beverly Hills.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Only one Sexy Liberal show in 2026. Saturday, October 24th at the Saban Theater in Beverly Hills. Tickets on sale now at sexyliberal.com.
The U.S. has often pursued policies that favor the wealthy and increase economic inequality, which economists and theologians have come to label the exact freaking opposite of Jesus' teachings about caring for the poor. Christian America has been caught up in the long con of trickle-down economics, a rigged system that gives massive tax breaks to the wealthiest who need them the least, and all too often punishes struggling people with cuts to social services, fare hikes, and a degrading minimum wage. Years of leadership and media demonizing the poor as worthless, lazy welfare cheats has helped millions of Christians make peace with the suffering of the least of us.
This is SiriusXM Progress. We are celebrating Harrison Ford's birthday today and Roger McGuinn's birthday today. And if you really want to feel old, I shouldn't do this, but I'll do it anyway. Happy 80th birthday to a guy I've interviewed many times, never on this show, but today he's 80, and that's Cheech Marin. And I can guarantee he's having some fun no matter what he's doing. Tommy Chong has done this show a couple of times. We've never had Cheech. Work on that. 866, Cheech is 80? Good God. 866-997-4748 is our number. We're going to be joined very shortly by Professor Corey Brettschneider. Let's get to the phone. Some of y'all have been so patient on hold. John is calling from Washington State on line 3. John, thank you so much for waiting and welcome. You're on Progress.
Hey, John. Good to talk to you. I loved your book, Separation of Church and Hate.
Thank you.
It really, really spoke to me what my faith is. Let me just tell you a little bit. I'm kind of a lapsed Protestant.
Right on.
And, most recently was attending a Lutheran church, which is involved in migrant issues because I'm fluent in Spanish. So I'm
very nice. Nice. Oh, you're the real thing then, man. You're the real deal. Okay, good. Thank you.
Well, so here's the funny thing. Over the past couple of years, I've become good friends with members of the Sikh faith, and I have become attracted to that.
Nice. What about the Sikh faith that's called to you, John? What about the Sikh faith? I grew up with some Sikh friends. What called to you about the faith?
So what is because they believe all people are created equal. Now, that may sound like highfalutin stuff, but it's something that you don't find any evangelical Christians really.
Yeah, I mean, it is something Jesus believed in, but not all of his fan clubs got the memo. He was very against hierarchies.
Yep. The Sikhs have been persecuted throughout history. That's a 500-year-old faith, exactly for that reason, because they were founded in India by a former Hindu.
Yes.
And because of the caste system, the Hindus have persecuted them, and the Muslims have persecuted them simply because they love to persecute whoever they can.
And let's not forget the Americans who persecute. Let's not forget the Americans who persecute
Sikhs because they don't know what they are.
And
so they just stereotype them because they
don't know what the head covering means.
Exactly. And so I do not wear a turban in public, but I do wear one when I'm in the temple. And I was in India, and I went to the Golden Temple, which is the Sikh Vatican, more or less.
Nice.
And here's the funny thing. I think a lot of Christians are missing out on something. What's a Trinity? Holy Trinity. You know that, John. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
No, I've heard of it, yeah.
And so that is something that I have experienced 3 times now in Sikh temples, which is the Spirit of God inside of me.
Right on, man.
It's profound.
Whatever works, whatever leads you there, whatever speaks to you spiritually.
It's something that I believe is missing from most people in the Christian faith. It's like, Pete Hegseth, well, I'm a born-again Christian, so I can kill Colombian fishermen, and God will forgive me. I can kill Iranian schoolgirls, and God will forgive me.
These are special kinds of frauds, but you're exactly right. This is what's turning people off to religion. It's not spirituality. It's not the concept of a loving God. It's not Jesus. It's not Noah's Ark. It's not Santa. It's the mean people. It's the hypocrites. It's these frauds who use Jesus. They don't follow his teachings. And if you try to talk about his teachings, they'll call you a woke communist. But they use him for power. And that's the whole history of authoritarian religion. Step 1, you use Jesus' name to get power. Step 2, you do the opposite of everything Jesus says. Step 3, if someone calls you out for it, scream that you're being persecuted. And I believe in spiritual fluidity. I think, it's really healthy. If you want to stay in the same religious world your whole life, that's great if that's your calling. But if you feel called to other things, I'm here because my parents got called into a life of celibacy in the clergy, and then they felt a calling to leave it. So it's like, I hear what you do, John. I have friends who've gone over to Islam, who've gone to Buddhism, and I feel like it's great. As long as you're being groovy and trying to be more loving and take care of the less fortunate, then you're on the path, no matter what the fan club name is.
Well, and I felt the need to mention it simply because listeners might have kind of seen Sikhs running around but not known what they are.
That's it.
I just wanted to encourage people to read a little bit about it. I'm not trying to convert, and Sikhs do not seek to convert.
I can tell. Yeah.
Fifth largest faith in the world, but they do not seek converts.
That's right.
They're big simply because Indian families are big, and so. But honestly, I tell you, I've just had nothing but great experiences among Sikhs. Because awesome. I wear what's called a kata. It's kind of like a bracelet.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
And that kata, by wearing a kata, you're saying I believe in one. I believe in one all powerful God.
Yeah, I get it.
I believe in the quality of all. I believe in the quality of all human beings, and I believe that it is a reminder to do no wrong with my hands. By wearing that. So
everything Jesus said, and the Christians didn't get the memo. John, thank you so much. I really appreciate your take, and I appreciate you teaching us all a bit more about the Sikh faith. Please don't be a stranger. Call us back some more. Michael in the Bronx. Welcome, sir. How are you today?
Hey. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, I can. Welcome.
Well, first off, since you were so eloquently talking about the hypocrites, let me tell you, hold on a second.
Oh, did I get you at a bad time, Michael? I can call back later. Sorry if this is inconvenient for you.
No, I can. I'm still talking.
Okay.
Sorry for the background noise.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
Getting back from lunch. So anyhow, let me emphasize. Remember the 2 readings I gave you before?
You got to refresh my memory, please. Refresh my memory. Which readings?
Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16, verse 5. Jesus speaks about exactly what you were talking about, being on guard against the use of the Pharisees.
Yeah.
That's St. Paul's letter to the Romans.
Yes, sir.
16, verses 17 through 18.
I'm with you now.
All right?
Yes, sir.
But now, let me talk about Mr. Bone Spurs.
Tell me quick, because I got 10,000 callers. Please, tell me quick about it, please.
He's going to lie about Lindsey Graham saying that he spoke with him about the Save America Act.
I agree.
Now, Graham last spoke on this a couple of months ago. If I remember, he said he doesn't know or doesn't think that they have the votes. And then Tom Tillis, Senate Majority Leader, just a few days ago saying, we don't have the votes. So, put those two together. between a few months ago and a few days ago. Where the hell do you think that we have the votes? So,
they don't have the votes. That's why it's pathetic. Trump is exploiting the death of this man. And by the way, Lindsey Graham signed up for this. Lindsey Graham signed up to be used by this man. And Trump is using him in death, not to talk about his accomplishments, because I don't think Lindsey Graham had many accomplishments beyond bringing money home for businesses in South Carolina and impeaching Bill Clinton for his private sex life. So Trump is going to exploit the death by trying to make it harder for American women to vote. It is vile on so many levels, Michael.
and which is my bottom line message to Mr. Bonespurs. You did it to Renee Wood. You did it to Alex. Oh God, I can't remember his last name.
Freddie.
Second American.
Freddie.
And then now you're doing it to Lindsey Graham. This is how fair I am. Defending a Democrat and defending a Republican who are no longer with us. Don't you dare lie about these people when they're no longer around to confirm or defend against your bull crap.
Right on, man. Michael, thank you very much. I appreciate your passion as always. It's great to hear you in the daylight. Let me say hello to Angela in Maryland, who's been on hold for ages. Angela, thank you for your patience. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
I just want to say thank you to Chris and Zia and you for including me in your opening, because the lady who says he's going to kill the ducks is me. And I thought that was so cool.
You hear this, Chris?
I'm a little bit of a narcissist, so it was kind of neat.
Well, we have a mutual contempt for duck killers, so you're in good company.
And it was hard to use. I had to cut out so many racial slurs, Angela. You really
seriously, Angela, you didn't need to say all the things you. I don't know why you had to go after so many minorities in that, but Chris was able to clean it up with AI.
I did not.
You went after everyone. You went after the Belgians. You went after everyone.
It's not. I'm a good girl mostly.
I know, mostly you are.
Anyway, I am so conflicted about Lindsey Graham's passing.
Okay.
I just am. I don't want anybody to be in hell.
I don't either.
I don't even want Donald Trump to be in hell.
I don't believe in hell, so I think you're okay. I mean, I don't really, what a place where fire hurts ghosts, where all the bad people go. It's not really it's kind of a made up concept, but that's a whole other show.
Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's being separated from God.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what the ancient Jews thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, but when I was a kid and I learned, I was like 15 and I'm like, wait, how can fire hurt a ghost? And bing, that went away from me. That whole programming left.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here on our first day, Angela. That's all right. God bless you. Thank you for being a part of our show. 866-997-GRIT. Alan is calling from Maine. Alan, your state is really going through it this week. Do we know anything about the guy who was killed by ICE yet?
Well, not yet. The only thing I've heard that he was a 26-year-old Colombian who had a Social Security number and was on his way to work. And I understand there are demonstrations forming already.
Oh, dear.
This is a town called Biddeford, which is just about half an hour north of where I am right now. So I don't know any of the details yet, but I can.
But I would imagine all eyes are going to be on Susan. I would imagine all eyes will be on Susan Collins, right? Like, will Susan Collins care that somebody was shot in your state, or will she just say they've learned their lesson?
I'm concerned.
No, I'm sure she is.
Concerned. I'm sure. But anyway, I think we've all heard the name Graham a lot more than we thought we would in the last several days. And I will confess, I was a supporter of Graham Plattner, and I was at one of his early town halls.
How was it?
Really resonated.
He's a good talker. I see why. I see why people would support him. If you didn't know the unfortunate details of his resume, he's got a lot of very attractive qualities for a candidate on paper.
Well, right, but I think a lot of people were sort of gulping and willing to deal with a lot of the old baggage, thinking it was old baggage.
Yeah.
And I started to get nervous when the reports came out about his sexting. Shortly after his marriage began, and I was praying that there would be nothing else, but I had to think there's got to be something else. And so I got, there are only 1.4 million people in Maine, and there are not many of us who donate big money. But unfortunately, I do. And so everybody knows who I am just because I am a donor.
Amen.
And needless to say, I've heard from his campaign, even though it ended, and they asked me, do you have a message for Graham? And my message, this is before he officially dropped out, and I said, please, please, please drop out now. And no, you do not get to decide who the next candidate is. And whether he did what he's being accused of or not is immaterial to me.
I agree.
His
At this point, it
campaign
is.
was going to be his campaign was over no matter what. And the thing that needs to happen is that they need to select somebody who can beat Susan Collins. And I say that as a former Susan Collins supporter. Many years ago, my dear friend Barney Frank was sitting on my back porch and heard me organizing a fundraiser for her. And he said to me, I know you support her, but you need to know whenever we've needed her, she's not there. And
Alan, I think I need to interview you. I think I need to interview you. If you're, I got to interview Congressman Frank as well for a film, and I mean, I find it so interesting that you were friends with him while voting for Collins. But it sounds like his advice to you was rather persuasive.
Well, it was. Well, I started. Well, you know what? If Barney said something, you listened.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably the smartest man I've ever known. I'm going to get emotional thinking about him.
Oh, God bless him. I know.
He was a great guy.
What a life.
And
what a life.
So after he said that to me, I started looking at her votes. And sure enough, if the Republicans needed her, no matter what it was, she would vote with them. Yeah. And I heard a former congresswoman, I think it was the current governor of Virginia, saying, what we used to say about Susan Collins is she was there when we don't need her.
Wow.
And so I think that's her MO. And I've called her office. They think I'm a crackpot now because I've called so many times. And the last time I said, I'm not calling her to ask her not to run. I'm asking her to resign because she's too much of a coward.
Good
she
for
is
you.
A MAGA. She's MAGA no matter how you look at it. She can call herself a Republican. In this day and time, you are either a MAGA or a Democrat. There's nothing else.
I'm afraid you're right. I do know a few endangered species Republicans in New York and California State, but generally, they're hard to find.
She pretends to be one. And the other point I'd like to make is where
she did. I wanted to say I hate to defend Susan Collins, but she did do the vote on the War Powers Act, and then when Rand Paul collapsed and changed his vote the next day, Susan Collins did not. So I have to be fair to her, and I'm done being fair to her. Go on.
With regard to Janet Mills, and a lot of people feel that she was abandoned here, I think Democrats still like Janet Mills. And I saw her recently, and I wanted to say, please don't run for Senate.
Yeah.
And it was only because I didn't say it. But I think the general consensus, from what I can tell from my friends, is she's 78 years old. She'll be 79 years old in December.
Yeah, I know. That's why she's not running.
If she were elected, she would be the oldest freshman senator in history. That's how I understand it. I can't guarantee that, but I've heard that.
And that's just what the Democratic Party need to know. God bless Janet Mills for dropping out. And God bless you, man, because you know what? You sound like a guy who's actually fighting to have the government raise his own taxes, and those are the finest people I know, Alan. So I thank you for sharing your journey with us. We have to go because our guest is waiting, but please don't be a stranger in this time slot, okay? Thank you. 866-997-GRIT. Let's take a very quick break. Be right back with Professor Brettschneider and your thoughts. This is Progress.
Are we clear? We good? Hi, Corey.
Hey, everybody.
I'm sorry we got a little delayed. Thank you so much.
No worries. Congrats on your new time.
Oh, it's a crazy day. It's a crazy day.
Loving it?
It's really weird. Martin Sheen was amazing.
Oh, nice.
And then while Martin Sheen was on the show, Whoopi Goldberg named my book as one of her summer books of the year on The View. So
wow,
my phone's just blowing up all over today, and I'm barely awake.
So great. We'll hype that up on the podcast too.
Thank you for these great topics, Corey.
Yeah, of course. Oh, and the guest is Senator Wyden for Oath, so I'll try to.
And when are we taping that? That's Wednesday, right?
Yeah, but it's just me and him, at
That's
11.
You and him, and then we're still taping tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time, right?
Exactly.
God bless. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah, Corey, what a day.
You loving it though?
Pardon?
You loving it?
I'm really tired, but I think I'm going to love it. I'm very mindful of how inconvenient this is for Chris and Thea and their nervous systems, and they're having to reshuffle their whole lives too. But I think once we get settled in, it's going to be better because I just can't stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning anymore.
So. Yeah, it's too hard, of course. And then just coming down from it at midnight.
It's so hard to get. I get off at midnight. I mean, here it's only 9 p.m. in LA, but still, it's like it's.
Well, you get all the Thom Hartmann listeners too, I bet.
We get the angry Thom Hartmann listeners today, but it's not as bad.
Really? Were they mad?
Yeah, that's going to happen for the next 2 weeks. We're going to get Thea's catching it. They're calling Thea and yelling at her. So,
dude, that's crazy.
I know, but it happened when we first launched on the old channel. We replaced Car Talk.
You can imagine
the hate we got for a month on that channel. All right, I'm going to mute here. Thanks, Corey.
Okay.
Daydreams for night owls. Catch John anytime, anywhere on the SiriusXM app or the next day on the John Fugelsang podcast.
Professor Corey Brettschneider is a constitutional law scholar, a professor of political science at Brown University. He's the author of The Oath and the Office and The Presidents and the People, 2 books you should have to understand constitutional democracy, and he is the host of the breakout monster podcast, The Oath and the Office, where he lets me help. Professor, it's good to see you. Welcome back to Progress in a different time slot. It's nice to see you in daylight.
Thanks so much, John. Yes, daytime, and congrats on this show. I mean, a hit already, having the President of the United States, my favorite former president, as your first guest.
Mine too.
Yeah. Just an amazing
Isn't that great?
moment.
And the former president's your opening act. So look at that, Corey. You're a good
Can I tell
headliner.
a quick story that goes with your first day? But when I was in law school, my mentor was Larry Lessig, and a person that some of your listeners might know. And anyway, we had a seminar, and I told him we were in a great discussion about the Constitution in Eastern Europe. And I told him, I never miss the West Wing. And so even though this is amazing, you're my favorite professor, I have to go home and watch the West Wing. And I ran home. I didn't live far from the law school. And I get there, and I turn on the television, and there's Christopher Lloyd, who announces himself, of course, from Back to the Future. And he says, "Hi, I'm here to see President Bartlett. My name is Larry Lessig." And I thought, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen and seen. And I saw him the next day, Larry.
Did the West Wing have real people on it? Did actors play real characters on the West Wing?
Well, in that episode, they did. And when I saw him the next day, of course, I wanted to know how the hell did this happen? He was laughing. He didn't say anything. He couldn't believe that he knew it was going to be on, but that I was leaving the conversation to run home to watch a show that he was going to be, about him. Anyway, the story is he had a student who was a writer for the West Wing who knew about all this work he had done and wanted to do an episode about it, so just used the real name.
Wow. I don't even know what to do with that information about Christopher Lloyd. Alex! Corey, I'm so glad you're with us today because I'm trying to make sense of this subpoena from this White House to these New York Times reporters. This is very terrifying to people who care about the First Amendment. It's federal prosecutors subpoenaing reporters for reporting a story over a national security story rather than prosecuting any actual leak, right? Can you explain what happened here and why are subpoenas against journalists so unusual?
Well, there was a New York Times story, which I'll just say what it was about the bribe plane from Qatar, and looking at why it wasn't being used. And the reporting suggested, of course, it's part of this. Our episode last week on The Oath, of course, was about the $2 billion theft presidency, the graft of all this. And now what better example than this bribe plane? And it turns out it doesn't have the capabilities to allow it to be used. So when the president was returning from Turkey, he wasn't on the bribe plane. Well, why was that? It looked like because of the defenses weren't there. So now all of a sudden, that's a standard journalistic story covering the main story of the moment, doing what democracy is supposed to do, And all of a sudden, there are subpoenas in what looks to be a criminal case, criminal subpoenas from the Southern District of New York, of the New York Times journalist who did this story in reference to it. And, that alone is a violation, of course, of free speech. And even if they don't get a conviction or there's no case that comes out of it, what the hell are you doing? This is not the topic of a criminal case. It's meant, as we've often talked about, to quell speech, to chill it is the way to put it. And you don't need a conviction for that. So it's a horrible moment. I have to say, too, I've been in a lot of discussions with people about how to basically, to really, my goal, I'll say, and I'm not getting all former Justice Department officials to agree with me, but I'm telling anyone who was in the Justice Department that will listen that that's what we've got to do. If you sign one of these subpoenas, you should be shamed. I don't care if you're 25 years old and right out of law school or you're a senior member of that department. You have to resign. You cannot be involved in this. And the person that issued these subpoenas, I met actually not too long ago. He was introduced to me as, one of the sensible Trumpers. And his name is Jay Clayton. He's the same person that was nominated to be the DNI. We've talked about him extensively. What the hell is he doing?
Oh yeah, you're friendlier to him than I am, by the way. You're friendlier to him than I am. But go on, Professor.
I regret shaking his hand after this, for sure.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like we've talked about the MO of this administration. Even if no reporter ultimately goes to jail, just issuing subpoenas seems to create a chilling effect because this guy's whole game is threatening anyone with the thought of legal costs that they just can't afford. Trump doesn't care about getting a conviction. He just cares about bankrupting you and making your life hell. And that's how they use this stochastic terrorism of getting people to self-censor, right? I mean,
that's right.
Governments sometimes do legitimately ask reporters not to publish classified information. I know that. But I mean, where's the balance between protecting national security and protecting a free press? Because again, they ain't going after whoever leaked. And they're not disputing that the paper told the truth.
Right. I mean, anytime you hear that phrase, national security, you should get your First Amendment antenna up because that's the thing it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, when Nixon wanted to justify any of his crimes, no matter how unrelated to actual national security it was, to his own security, he used the phrase national security. And that's what you're seeing from this administration. Now, when you have what are supposed to be independent officers of the Department of Justice, officers of the court, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, that's a position that's been held by legends. Preet Bharara, who we've had on the show and who I've collaborated with. I mean, these are people who took their jobs seriously, who were worried about taking phone calls from presidents. And now all of a sudden, obviously what Jay Clayton is doing is the bidding of this president in not indicting, but even in the subpoena alone. It's meant to send a message that we're watching.
I mean, I don't know where this sits alongside Nixon or the Pentagon Papers, but I mean, the Constitution never explicitly creates the press as an institution, but the First Amendment places freedom of the press right there next to freedom of religion, right there next to freedom of speech. Corey, why was that so important to the founders?
I think it's always important to go back to basics and talk about the right of free speech and the deeply related right of the freedom of the press. Together, they're not any kind of right. We often think about free speech as, freedom of expression. This is what I feel or what I think. And that's really not what it's about in the Constitution. It's about democracy. It's about the idea that if it really is a government of we the people, that we have to have access to the information of what our leaders are up to. And if they're being corrupt, we need to know about it. George Washington said in the first inaugural, subject me to constitutional punishment and upbraidings if I violate the Constitution. How can we do that if we don't know what's going on? And yet, this is the extreme opposite. It's meant to just shut it down.
You're so right. I do want to ask you about the feel-good story of the week for me, which is Nick Kristof infuriating Elon Musk by telling the truth. But let me get a quick call in. Marie is on line 5 from Atlanta. Marie, hello and welcome. You're on Progress with Professor Brettschneider and me. How are you today?
Hello, thanks for taking my call. Hello, Professor Brettschneider.
Hi, Marie. Always great to hear from you. I know you're watching the Oath, listening to the Oath in the Office too, and great to connect with you in both places.
Surely am. Thank you. So here's the thing. Regarding the gentlemen who were in the vehicle, the workers who were in the vehicle with Mr. Araujo when he was killed by ICE down in Texas, there are visas that are specifically for the witnesses of crime to keep them here so they can testify.
Yeah.
So as I'm thinking through this, on the one hand, in the normal circumstance, one might be able to ask the state attorney general to apply for those visas to protect the witnesses and keep them here. But this happened in Texas.
Yeah.
So I bring this up to make sure, number one, that the listeners understand why it is so important to pay attention to who you elect at the state level, not just the federal level.
Thank you.
But, Professor Brettschneider, I'd be curious to know, how is it possible that we could maybe get those gentlemen protected by U visas?
I mean, it's amazing, Corey. They didn't wear any body cams. We give them billions, but they can't afford cameras, I guess. And so they're asking us to believe this man used his vehicle as a weapon. All three witnesses in the car say it's not true, and they're trying to deport these people before any investigation or any testimony. I mean, it's astonishing they're doing this out in the open.
Yeah, I mean, I'll think about the visa issue. I mean, the problem is, of course, visas are controlled by the federal government. The immigration system, it's part of the reason why it's so lawless, is largely not accountable because it's within the federal system. But that doesn't mean that if you commit a crime in a locality like Texas, like Houston, that there aren't things that local government can do. So the thing that I'm pushing for every time I can talk to a state attorney general or state official, and I say it as much as I can on the radio, is if you commit a crime and you're an ICE officer, you are not immune. Yes, there are some kinds of immunity that make it hard to sue ICE officers, but they are not absolutely immune, despite what J.D. Vance said at one point, from criminal accountability. And my understanding is that in Minnesota, there is a criminal investigation of an ICE officer. And there should be one here too. And the idea that there's some kind of impunity for murder or for unlawful shootings is just false. So that's the thing I'm pushing. Criminal investigation.
But if you can convince people that undocumented humans aren't humans, that's how you do it, right? I mean, when you call them illegals, when you call them vermin, when you call them an infestation, when you dehumanize them, and authoritarian regimes have always shown this, it's harder to get people to care if you don't describe them as neighbors, as moms and dads. I mean, doesn't justice require preserving witness testimony regardless of immigration status?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, my strategy has been to call out the crime. And when it's assault with a deadly weapon or murder, people understand that. They attach a human being to that. And the more that we talk about illegals and through the language of immigration, that's a problem. And the reason why I'm trying to talk through the language of criminal law as much as I can is because there is accountability at the state level. It's just that state's attorney general or local prosecutors haven't wanted to deal with it. Well, what makes them act is when media and when citizens start saying, hey, where's your indictment? Where's your investigation?
That's it. Marie, thank you. Anything else? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, actually it does. It brings up a sort of related point from the criminal justice perspective. The federal government, DOJ, has enjoyed the presumption of regularity up until this administration. And courts are now beginning to call them out on that. And what I'm wondering is if, just as one can file for sanctions for someone who's overly litigious, I think it's Rule 6, 12b6 sanctions. I'm wondering if there is a way that state prosecutors can start arguing that presumption of regularity is being abused in the criminal context, or if defense lawyers can start arguing that in defending their clients and seeking sanctions so that they're not being bled dry with legal fees. It's a thought.
Yeah. I mean, we had Glenn Kirschner talking about the presumption of regularity, the idea that basically lawful action is taking place by the Department of Justice. And what I'm hearing from people who are either were DOJ lawyers or are there now is that that's disappearing. And there's reporting on this too, because judges, federal judges in particular, are so fed up with the idea that they know that they're being lied to, the idea that you would sort of trust the federal government, I think is thankfully falling by the wayside. And what I'd say about at the state level is absolutely, far from assuming that the federal government is engaged in lawful action, we should be assuming the opposite.
Marie, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it. 866-997-4748. Marie's here to ask the questions I'm too dumb to ask Corey, and she's sort of like I tag out for her. Okay, so I mentioned this a second ago, but, Elon Musk challenged Nick Kristof And by the way, Elon Musk is making me ashamed to be a billionaire racist ketamine addict. I mean, the man's melting down. And the real story here is how Silicon Valley and big tech just find white supremacy not a deal breaker, but he is responsible directly for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of human beings, including children. And this is not an opinion. And Nick Kristof wrote about it. Musk challenged him to identify people harmed by Doge-related aid cuts. And Kristof responded right away, naming specific reported deaths due to Elon's petulant little feeding it into a wood chipper line. I mean, governments always make budget decisions that have life and death consequences. And transparency is a constitutional value. But, I mean, what do you make all of this? Does democratic accountability require government officials, and that's what he is, to confront the human consequences of policy decisions? Because quite frankly, I'm thrilled seeing Nick Kristof do this.
You know, Elon Musk inadvertently gave the American public one of the biggest gifts he could have given, which was to challenge a journalist, to an opinion writer, to name names and to really tell the story, not in terms of abstractions, USAID, harm to malaria programs, but, who died from malaria as a result of destroying Doge, and Doge is destroying USAID. And Kristof really came back with this powerful column saying, he's, of course, of the, hundreds of thousands who are dead as a result of Elon Musk's action, naming, just a couple of them and telling their story and children.
Yes.
And so being able to do that.
Because who's going to do it? Who's going to do it if a free press doesn't do it? Who's going to do it? How are Elon Musk's eyeballs ever going to see these names? I don't see the Democratic Party doing it, and I don't think any kind of law enforcement agency is going to do it.
Right. And we've been talking, throughout this discussion about how do you make the harms that the Trump administration is doing concrete, and telling the stories is part of it. I have to say there's another particular gift, which is that Elon Musk, of course, is now the richest person in the world. And the idea that the richest person in the world is targeting for death the weakest, the poorest. I mean, you can't get a more compelling, more emotionally salient idea than that. So you want to know how you fight back? Look at Nick Kristof. I mean, that is amazing work that he's doing.
Facts. Yep, free press and facts. I disagree with Kristof all the time. I make fun of him when it's warranted, but he is doing the Lord's work right now, and he's doing the work of the free press. He's being a journalist in a world full of infotainment. So and anyone who's talking about the deaths of USAID, I think we have to listen, because even if particular deaths, Corey, can't legally be attributed to one official, we live in a society where elected leaders bear no responsibility for any of the consequences of their policies. I mean, up to 1 million people were killed because of Bush and Cheney's lies that led to a war in Iraq. But our constitutional system just seems to assume, voters will judge them. Voters will judge them over these policies. But there's never going to be accountability.
Yeah, and when you really bring this story home, we have the names now of these people who are dead as a result of Musk destroying the USAID. I have to say, too, another kind of personal note is I was giving a lecture in Vermont, and the colleague's spouse was a former USAID worker, and she was talking about how all her and her colleagues, in a normal, instance in which you lose your job, you go out into another profession, into another part of the profession, but the whole profession is gone. And, there's not a lot of sympathy, I think, maybe in itself for these workers until you realize what they were doing. They were keeping people alive. So we now know who they were keeping alive. One last point about this, it's something like $10 that Americans saved in order to get this 700,000 lives lost. Does anybody really think that the $10 on average was worth it for,
Does anybody think Elon Musk actually lowered the deficit? Does anybody think we're going to be close to a balanced budget from this? This was just them firing career government employees, a lot of them non-white, and this was them cutting off aid to the poorest parts of the world. This was a white supremacy fever dream. Every part of it, an anti-democratic fever dream led by these two revolting millionaires at birth with no appreciation of their own privilege. And we know they're going to spend the rest of their lives trying to avoid accountability for it, but Musk is going to be around a lot longer. So I'm kind of hoping he gets these names thrown in his face for the rest of his miserable existence. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to fight this war on multiple fronts. One is the human story, telling the people whose lives were lost. The other is the incredibly small savings that we've gotten out of this. And the other is, think about it in terms of, the larger costs that the Elon Musk of the world and Donald Trump want us to only think about self-interest. Well, think of how America is perceived after abandoning its commitment to these people. Think of the instability of governments that's going to be created as a result of these deaths. And think of the really destruction of any possibility of democracy abroad in the absence of basic needs being met. And so, it isn't just, it's on all levels. The richest and stupidest man in the world, I think, is how I describe it.
And Corey, the Trump administration, also the war on museums continues. They really don't like history being taught in museums, and this is the sign of white supremacy. They never get upset at actual prejudice. They never get upset at bigotry or discrimination. They get furious at programs to stop discrimination. They get furious at people teaching the history of the discrimination, and they have gone after the Smithsonian over exhibits involving slavery, systemic racism, women's rights, LGBTQ history, immigration. Every time America seems to recognize, oh, we were dicks, and then tries to make it right in just our museums, if not our policy. How can a president constitutionally pressure federally supported museums to reinterpret history? I mean, it's a denial of reality to make racists more comfortable so their kids won't ask unpleasant questions.
This story has so much in it that it's really an amalgam of all the different issues that we've talked about since the beginning of this administration. The attack on independent agencies. The Smithsonian is not controlled by the president, and yet he wants control over their message. The war.
It is publicly funded, though, right? It is publicly funded. So the argument is electeds get to determine. I mean, what's interpreted.
But it's run by a board, and Justice Roberts, actually, my understanding, is the chair of the board. And, they've been able to resist a lot of what Trump was trying to do because of their independence. Now, that doesn't mean that Trump is going to respect that independence. And he's tried to exert pressure through threats of withdrawing funding and other mechanisms in order to put pressure. He did succeed in getting the resignation of one person who noted, for instance, on his portrait that he was impeached twice, a fact that is necessary if you're going to describe him. And a lot of this story is really about personal criticism as he sees it. So the head of the Smithsonian was showing him an exhibit about slavery. He had no interest. Instead, he talked about his polling numbers and how popular he is in parts of the world, and the head of the Smithsonian made a public statement about this, saying this president is indifferent basically to slavery, one of the biggest crimes against humanity ever. And he doesn't like that, So the story of why he cares about this so much isn't just his racism. It's the story of shutting down critics. He sees the Smithsonian is not supportive, and that's the end of them.
Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of societies in history where governments tried to redefine an official version of history, and they're now viewed as the good guys. That's just me, but I don't see this playing out well long term. Before I let you go, Professor, let me ask you about what we began this segment discussing. Bribe Force One. The Secret Service apparently were the ones who convinced Trump not to fly on the newer aircraft because the defensive systems were incomplete. We, the taxpayers, haven't finished paying to upgrade it so he can keep the damn plane. The amount of self-enrichment, the emoluments clause will never stop throwing up. But doesn't this show why independent professional agencies exist? To tell a president no when safety demands it?
Wow. This story, I guess a lot of these, you can see them through so many lenses. So, of course, this is the story that triggered what we talked about at the beginning of our discussion, the subpoenas of these New York Times journalists who covered it. And Bribe Force One, John, wow, I got to kudos. I think you came up with bribe play. And now this is an even better way to describe it. And we'll henceforth, from now on, we'll talk about it as Bribe Force One. It is a symbol of government is supposed to be rational. And there are ways that civil servants make decisions about what to purchase, how to purchase it, who to purchase it from, to look for corruption. And what Trump does, whether it be the pool out on the Washington Mall or the Bribe Force One, he couldn't care less. It's all about him and his graft.
That's right. And
the idea that the symbol of the United States, Air Force One, would be turned into a symbol of the emoluments violations, the bribe plane, what a frightening moment. And so, you want to know why a free press matters? Because none of the stories, not this one, not any of the ones that we've talked about, we wouldn't know about it without independent journalism. And that's what he sees as the threat. Facts. Same with the Smithsonian story too.
Professor Corey Brettschneider is the author of The Presidents and the People and the Mac of the Oath in the Office podcast. Corey, what's the best way for our listeners to follow you and keep up with your brilliance?
Well, one of the amazing things, John, about doing this podcast is that we get to talk to the people who are fighting back against Trump. We've tried to highlight them, and I can't think of anyone better on these issues than Senator Wyden from Oregon. And so listen to, comes out Thursday, of course, our discussion with Senator Wyden. You and I are going to go in depth on these issues, use what we talked about today as a jumping off point and really get into it. And so wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Substack, the Oath in the Office Substack, and also Blue Sky, Democracy Prof. Thanks so much. And congrats again, John, on this amazing new hour, this new slot.
Oh, thank you, Professor. Congratulations on the podcast going to #1 on Apple Government, too. So, hey, let's live it up. Thank you, Corey. We got to take a quick break. Back with your calls in just a moment. This is SiriusXM Progress.
Hi, and welcome back. Just 923 days left to go in our countdown to liberty. Today, Donald Trump has been missing in action after golfing yesterday. No one's really seen or heard from him today, except to say that he really misses his friend Lindsey Graham, who apparently died early this morning because of an aortic dissection caused by arterial sclerosis. Boy, I got that one out. Meanwhile, Mitch McConnell begged by the governor of the state of Kentucky for proof of life, sent a statement out today along with a picture with him and his wife. And according to one reporter inside the White House pool, because of the way we live today, we can't be sure that somebody didn't poison Lindsey Graham, and that what we saw of Mitch McConnell was an AI-generated photo. What a world we live in. Meanwhile, the Senate is in trouble for the Republicans. They're at least one vote down and maybe two. And it was not Mitch McConnell, but Lindsey Graham who was able to reach across the aisle for the Republicans, meaning this is going to be one very interesting long summer and one hot fall. See you next time.
Let's go back to the phones. And let me just take a moment to thank everyone at SiriusXM for this transition. Thank you, Rory. And let's thank the guy who's trying to kill me for the insurance money. And of course, I want to thank the most dangerous squad in broadcast production, Chris Household and Thea Harper, who put this show together and slum it with me. All right, let's try and make everyone's calls as quick as possible so we can get to as many folks as we can. Kathy in Michigan on line 4. You've been on hold forever. Thank you and welcome.
Wow, I just want to say thank you for taking my call. And I hear an echo. Do you hear an echo?
No, I don't. Not anymore. Do you hear it? Do you still hear it?
Great.
Great.
Yeah. No, I can't. No, I can't.
Okay.
I just loved listening to Martin Sheen. I've been inspired by him for a long time, as well as the Berrigan brothers, and I'm pretty much a lifelong, since I was a teenager, activist and artist, and I don't get much time to do my art because there's just too much to do to try to stop what's going on. One of the things that's been bothering me in my state is that there's a woman who's a Democrat that's running for Senate, U.S. Senate, and she's running. Her name is Haley Stevens.
Oh, yes, I've heard of her. Yes.
Yes, and she's running against Abdul Syed, and I just want your listeners to know how important the primaries are, especially in the state of Michigan, because if she gets in and she's taken over $5 million from AIPAC, which is the American Israeli Political Action Committee. A lot of people don't know what it stands for. It's just so much more influence from Israel, and now they're talking about merging our military with the Israeli intelligence and other parts.
Yeah.
And it's really frightening.
If it comes down to Haley Stevens versus a Republican, what do you do?
Well, I won't like it at all. I don't think I can vote for her. I don't think my conscience will let me,
If that allows a Republican to be the senator in your state, are you okay with that? Because voting Democratic always means compromises, doesn't it? I mean, always.
I know, maybe I will, but right now I don't want to think that way. I want to visualize Abdul winning because he's not taking money from anybody, you know? And there's no reason why he shouldn't be the winner. He's a very intelligent man. And I was at the convention in Detroit when they had the Democratic endorsement convention. And I don't know if you heard the story about Haley Stevens getting up on the stage, but she was really booed by hundreds of people.
She's very unpopular, I know.
Yes, she is. And I saw something on Facebook, and I very rarely answer something, but it said that Haley Stevens was going to win. This was by an individual, and this individual called me a Jew hater. And I was so appalled. This woman knows who I am, too. I mean, she knows what my history has been as an activist and the things I've stood up for. So, I had to really call her out on the accusations like that have cost people their jobs, all over the country.
I hear you, Kathy. I'm with you, and this is going to be the struggle with the Democratic Party because it's going to come down to her versus him, and a lot of people are going to be unhappy no matter who it is. And I'm hoping that by the time we get to November, everyone will be on the same side because the greatest hope fascists have is Democrats and liberals hating each other. I hope that we can just have this primary and find out who's going to be the nominee and not have it tear people apart. I got to run, but I thank you so much for calling, Kathy. I want to get to people who've been on hold as long as you. Daryl in South Carolina on line 3. Thank you, Daryl. Welcome. You're on Progress.
Hey, good afternoon, John. Congratulations on the new show. Loving it.
Thank you, sir.
Really enjoyed the interview with Martin Sheen. I've been a fan of his, since the beginning.
Me too.
One claim of fame or claim of shame of mine is I was a member of T.D. Jakes' church when it was a storefront church in South Charleston, West Virginia, with 20 folding chairs.
Wow.
Pretty wild to see where that man had gone to. Good, bad. He was supposobly gay. His wife was supposedly a prostitute. I don't know if that's true or not. They met and then became the Pentecostal church. Me personally, I hold faith in my heart. I don't need anybody else to tell me what I have. Don't need to go to a church. Don't need a building. And
it's not if that's what works for you, great. But you don't need to have a middleman in your spiritual life.
That's it. So one last thing on the when we were talking with about billionaires and such taking over our network TVs, let's have the entertainment industry come together instead of buying sports teams. Let's have them put their money where their mouth is, where their wallet is, and buy some of these entertainment and news organizations and get.
Once upon a time, Al Gore did that with a bunch of his rich friends and offered me a job, and I thought he meant it. We thought Current TV was going to be exactly what you're talking about, Daryl, and it wound up being they just wanted to build a property they could sell. But I share your dream because the news being what it is, we there's enough progressives who care that, if they wanted to, guys with money could get. The problem always is with any kind of progressive programming, and this is why I'm so grateful for this channel. On terrestrial radio, it's hard to have a channel like this because these iHearts are run by CEOs who don't like guys like me saying they should have their taxes raised. So it's really tricky to get these messages out.
Well, one last thing. If we Democrats, left, right, center, like you were just saying, do not come together and stop nitpicking and biting each other in the ass, we are going to lose this. But I think we're in a position right now that we are going to win. We are going to take the House, the Senate, and then in 2 years of presidency. But we have got to come together. Hey,
I think you're right. I've never belonged to a party. Amen, sir. I've never belonged to a party before, but I always vote for whichever candidate's policies will help the most people and hurt the fewest, which is why I always go for the most leftist candidates, generally. And it's why I have no problem voting for a moderate Democrat if that's the only choice I have, because most of them on their worst day are better than someone who would kiss Trump's ring.